I don't know if we see a lot of these big names like Thomas and Kyrou moved anytime soon. I don't know if it gets done. It seems that if you're going to do it, it's probably more of a draft deal in the summertime. But certainly Falk and Sundqvist and you look at Jordan Binnington, those names are out there, right? And there's a lot of teams with needs for right-handed defenseman and Falk, for a goaltender in Jordan Binnington. Teams like Carolina, Detroit, even Vegas, teams that need to get over the hump and they need a goalie to do it. And Jordan certainly has been that guy.
BK and Ferrario on trade deadline day as Brandon Kiley broke his microphone before we even opened things up. We're not even at Centene, man, and you find a way to disrupt the studio before we get going on trade deadline.
3 hours till deadline, and the Blues have done a whole lot of nothing alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, what do you make of it, man? Where are we at? What's going on?
This doesn't surprise me. I think this is where you're at. I think this is a game of chicken with you and NHL teams of we're not giving up players unless you're giving us the heavy price. I think all of the work for Doug Armstrong is going to come with less than 2 hours to go.
Well, clearly.
Yes.
That's a bold prediction, right. But I do think you're right.
It's a bold prediction, but I think this is what happens. Nobody expects Doug. All of these teams going to other teams now to see if they can make smaller deals because Doug's not willing to give up the big piece that they want. But some of these teams have been unsuccessful getting those big pieces. Utah hasn't gotten their center. Boston or Detroit have not gotten their right-handed defenseman. The Devils and Islanders haven't got their goal scorers yet. Those are the teams that say, all right, let's go back to St. Louis and see if they're willing to lower their asking price. And when Doug says no, then you get to decide as the opposite team, how desperate are you to make that deal?
Yeah. You freaking out yet, T-Bone?
I have some intrusive thoughts that are going through my mind.
Share them with us.
Well, what if he doesn't do anything here at the deadline and he's over-leveraging all of his pieces that he has at this year's deadline? And mostly I'm just circling Justin Falk really as that piece because Thomas, Kyrou, Parayko feel more like off-season moves, and I feel like we've been saying that for a month now. Mm-hmm. Falk's the one that I'm looking at going, okay, I'm surprised he's the one that's not been dealt yet because he's the best right shot defenseman on the market, and we've heard literally nothing about him. Now, maybe that's a good thing because Army doesn't leak anything from his inner circle, but that would be my intrusive thought. But, seeing that they haven't done anything with 3 hours to go, some of it makes some sense because they are all very complicated deals that they're trying to accomplish when you're talking about Parayko with a no-trade clause when they tried that with Buffalo. Same with Thomas, who's got a no-trade clause, and they're asking for the moon. Same with Kyrou, who's got a no-trade clause. I'm not surprised that there's been nothing done. I just have that one intrusive thought that does pop in my head every now and then.
Let's start here, Alex. Who are the players that actually need to be dealt? Not that could be, not that they would like to get done, but guys that need to be traded within the next 3 hours, in your opinion.
Falk and Suter. Falk, because I don't think his price is ever going to be as good as it is right now. And now that Logan Mailloux is playing as well as he is, he should be a top 4 defenseman, and Colton Parayko is here. And Pius Suter, because teams are handing out first-round picks like bubblegum right now. And, I mean, if Nick Waugh's going to get a first-round pick, then Pius Suter should get you a first-round pick. So those are the two guys that I would say if you do not wrap up this deadline and they are on this, or if you wrap up this deadline and they are on the team, I think that's a failure on Doug Armstrong's part.
And I would argue it's just Justin Falk. I think he's the one guy that you really need to get done at this year's deadline because you could still revisit the Pius Suter conversation in the offseason. He does not have any no-trade protection. Hell, he could start next year with you, and it's fine.
Yeah, but the problem with Pius Suter...
Could be a deadline edition next year for somebody.
Maybe, and you're right. The problem with Pius Suter in the offseason is every team thinks that my minor league player or my guy that I drafted in the first round can give me what Pius Suter. Desperate teams go for Pius Suter at the deadline because they're like, that guy can help me win a Stanley Cup, which you're not getting a first-round pick for Pius Suter in the offseason. You're going to hold on to him till the deadline next year, then, yeah, that's fine. I just think right now, as somebody once told us, it's a buyer's market. I think it's more of a seller's market. I would be really actively trying to move Pius Suter to try and get me the best return possible.
I would argue Oskar Sundqvist is more of a guy that I think needs to be dealt at this year's deadline than Pius Suter. He's a pending UFA. He's got some value. I don't think you're going to get a ton for him. Get like a late-round pick. But he doesn't really have much of a role on this team at this point. Go ahead and send him to some level of a contender. They can use him as a fourth-line center, and you go your separate ways. This offseason, you can bring him back. It's a 3-month mercenary for another team. It's not the end of the world. He doesn't have any no-trade protection. those are the deals that I think there should be some sense of urgency on. And we've been talking about this, T-Bone, you're right, for months. Brayden, Schenn, could you get a deal done? Yeah, I'd like to see a deal get done there. But he does have a limited no-trade clause, and he also has 2 more years of control if you're the Blues. Do I think that they should be looking at deals for Kyrou or Thomas or Parayko as they just did, or Benner? Absolutely. Yeah, all of those I think they should be looking at. But again, there's no trade clauses that you have to handle there. And that makes it a little more complicated, especially with the term that remains on all of those deals that I just mentioned. So the more traditional trade deadline deals that we talk about, it's really Justin Falk, who has 1 year left of club control, and a guy like an Oscar Sundqvist. So if they leave today and they got nothing for Justin Falk, I would call it a failure. But if they're able to get the Justin Falk deal done, they send Oscar Sundqvist somewhere and get like some kind of a conditional pick for him, I think that's a fine deadline. It's disappointing relative to what we had been talking about for the last 4 or 5 days, but I wouldn't say that it's any kind of a failure of a trade deadline, given what they can still do in the offseason and what was always likely to be off-season moves.
Yeah, I told T-Bone this in the office. I think there's going to be a lot of Blues fans that when the deadline buzzes and Thomas and Kyrou and Parayko and Binnington and Schenn are all on this team still, people are going to overreact saying Doug Armstrong failed again. I just think this is a saga that carries into the offseason. I think a lot of these guys, if they don't make the move at the deadline, they're just going to revisit it. The conversations are going to pick up. The failure grade can step in once they start next season with all of these players on the roster still. That's when you could look at it and say, cool, you failed, because you're just repeating and doing the same thing over again. But I'm not going to go off of a deadline where you can't move these guys, because typically at the deadline, you're not getting players. You're not getting high-level prospects in return. You're getting B-level prospects and draft picks. That's gold at the deadline, not the players that the Blues are looking for.
Yeah, they tried to trade Colton Parayko. Army did his job.
I mean, they traded Colton Parayko.
He said no.
Yeah.
Thus is life in the NHL nowadays. Sometimes a guy says no. They've had this happen a few times. Last year, reportedly, Brayden Schenn said, no, not moving. Couple of years ago, Torrey Krug said, no, not moving. Third time, they thought maybe it would be a charm. Nope. Colton Parayko said, I like it here in St. Louis. I'm going to keep hanging out here in St. Louis.
Amen,
and God
brother.
bless him for it. You know, he's made this his home, and I think it's a strong statement in support of this organization, this city, this fan base, that Colton Parayko wants to remain here, despite how mostly awful the Blues have been over the last few seasons. So, yeah, credit to him, credit to this organization for being in that position. The next conversation becomes, hey, should the Blues operate a little differently then? Because they are in a tough spot right now. You've got no trade protection in one level or another with Kyrou and Thomas and Booch and Schenn and Parayko and Falk and Fowler and Binnington. And when you have all of these either limited or full no trade clauses, it does limit what you're able to do as a general manager. So I'm already seeing this, whether on social media or other media observers, Alex, saying, hey, in the future, the Blues should try to operate differently. Give fewer of these no trade clauses, because it does put you in a really tough spot. Do you agree with that criticism?
No, I think it's a dumb take. I think if you act as if you can get players to your team without no trade clauses, you don't understand how this market works. My follow-up to the people that would be saying that is, did you like the contract that Colton Parayko signed at $6.5 million? Because that's because he got a no-trade clause. Did you like the contract that Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou both signed? I guarantee everybody in St. Louis, the moment they signed those, was like, $8 million for these guys? Hell yeah. That's because of a no-trade clause. I think, if I'm not mistaken, did Philip Broberg get some no-trade protection when he signed his contract?
Yeah, towards the back end. When he turns 27.
I think there's an age where it can.
27.
So, yeah.
You like Philip Broberg at $8 million? That's because of a no-trade clause. Like, You're not getting free agents to sign with your team unless there's no trade protection put in. That is how the market works. So if you want the team to be competitive in the future, then no, they don't operate. The bigger problem in the conversation that people should be having isn't the Blues need to operate differently with these no trade clauses. It's they need to evaluate these players quicker and decide if they're a part of your core. Because if we end this trade deadline and go into next season as Blues fans with Jordan Kyrou on the roster, and if you're not a fan of Jordan Kyrou and don't think he's a part of the answer, the problem isn't he got a no trade protection. The problem is you kept going 3 years later when he underwhelmed with what you were hoping for in terms of the type of player he was, and you said, we'll continue with this.
It's the Cardinals' problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
You wait and wait and wait and wait, and by the time you're ready to make a move, it's like, oh no, now we're stuck.
There's either no value or you're stuck.
And that's not the case with Colton Parayko. Colton Parayko was, hey, we're getting a crazy good offer. Let's go to him and let's make this move. He's not, we're fine with him being here.
And they've pivoted, right?
Yeah.
They thought they were going to be better this year. We all thought they were going to be better this year. And so if they were, well, then having a 32-year-old Colton Parayko at $6.5 million is an asset. That's a good thing for your club. That's why other teams want him right now. But now that they appear to be going through something more resembling of a rebuild, well, having a 32-year-old, maybe a 33-year-old next year at $6.5 million when you could get a significant asset in return, that changes things.
Yeah.
But they did this with Booch, where they went up to the deadline and said, you know what, we actually think we'd rather build around him than trade him. That now looks bad. I thought at the time it was the smart move. Clearly I was wrong and they were wrong.
High five.
High five.
Last offseason, there were a lot of rumblings about the possibility of trading Jordan Kyrou. They decided not to do so, and now he has the full no trade clause. Maybe they regret that move. They decided to turn things over to Robert Thomas and make him the guy that they were building around up the middle. I don't know if this is 100% true, but it seems like maybe there's some regrets in that regard. So, yeah, it's about evaluation, and it's about timing, and it's about making these moves with some level of urgency. I don't think it's about the no trade protection. This is part of what you have to do to have business in the NHL. If you want high-level players, what comes along with that is no trade protection. There's no way of getting around it. They have already put themselves a little bit behind by their unwillingness to give out the no move clause.
Yeah.
If you're now also unwilling to do a no trade clause, good luck getting any level of high level free agent, and good luck trading for anybody that is a high level player, because they all have that included in their contract now.
And let's call a spade a spade. If you're going to be sitting here whining about the Blues and giving out their no trade clauses, go ahead and look around the National Hockey League. You guys think the New York Rangers are in a good spot as an organization? No. They've got 6 guys with no trade protection, and 4 of those 6 have no move clauses.
I think it's a fourth of the league or a third of the league has no trade protection.
You might have the fewest in terms of no trade protection for your players, because a lot of guys have modified no trade protection at this point. This is how the league operates, and with the cap going up, guys are going to be getting paid $3 or $4 million than what you'd expect them to get paid. You want it lesser? Give them no trade protection.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. If you guys want to check us out on YouTube, you can do so along with your 230 other best friends. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL. A little lower than I would hope. Let's go ahead and get that number up. Let's get up to 300 to 400 by the 12 o'clock hour.
500.
Let's try to get to 400 by the 12 o'clock hour. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL. Check it out over there. By the way, you can get the latest edition of the Redbird Report over at YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL.
People are hopping over there right now?
That's right.
Yeah. Why would you want to talk about the trade deadline?
We'll have a new episode of the Last Minute Blues podcast once the buzzer sounds.
Seeing a lot on the YouTube chat about Corey Perry. Apparently, Corey Perry has been traded.
Chasing down another cup.
Traded to Tampa Bay for a second-round pick, according to
Second-round
Elliot
pick
Friedman.
for Corey Perry. Wow.
That one I get. Corey Perry is a playoff
After
performer.
there was talks of, hey, maybe he signs an extension in LA, the Kings said, nah, he's going to go to Florida.
Well, the Kings were like, oh, we're actually kind of bad, so let's go get a second-round pick.
If he's able to get that, the Blues should be able to get a first-round pick for Brayden Schenn.
Yeah.
Plus, I agree with you, Alex. Corey Perry, good playoff performer. Also, 40 years old.
Also a fourth liner at this point, right?
Yeah, third to fourth, yeah. And if he's getting that for you, I would anticipate you should be able to get a first-round pick for
I think
Brayden
it's first
Schenn.
plus. for Brayden Schenn. Like, I think you're talking prospect with a first-round pick.
Coming up in about 15 minutes, is there a scenario in which Dustin May could actually work his way into the Cardinals' plans beyond 2026? Our hope is we don't have to talk about that, and there's something Blues-related that we can get to coming up at 11:30. But if they do nothing, we'll talk about that. But coming up next, there are two players that have been speculated about, Alex, around the NHL that I think are the most interesting NHL players potentially that could be in play for the Blues. We'll tell you about them next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So a lot of speculation out there. Not many trades so far, but Corey Perry has been dealt to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Second rounder going in return to LA. That's one of those things, Alex, where in the offseason, if you're not going to be a contender, just sign those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Sign the guys that
those guys don't want to go to your team unless you're a contender.
I mean, Corey Perry signed with, what, the Chicago Blackhawks? A couple of years ago?
That was a couple of years ago, yeah.
If just sign guys that are going to be sought after commodities at the deadline.
Yeah, that's what you rebuild with.
The Blues should be in that market sooner rather than later. Like next year, Blues should sign Corey Perry.
Yeah, all right, I'm in on that.
They're retool. I actually do like Corey Perry, so I'd be all in on that. That dude is just a pain in the ass to play against.
We're going to borrow the DeWitt's phrase. We're building.
No, we're tooling. Doug's talking today at 3. I would say make a drinking game of how many. Take a shot every time he says retool, because there's going to be a lot.
I don't want to be on my ass by 3 o'clock.
I don't know if he's going to go there today. I think he will pivot the conversation to something different.
If they don't move anybody off of their roster, I think he's going to kind of be like, oh, the market's not there, and you just kind of play it easy.
Exactly.
If they make moves, that's when the retool word is going to start flying.
I wonder what he says about the Parayko situation, because he's going to be asked about it.
I actually think he's going to say can't comment on it.
That's what I think, too.
Yeah, is what it is. Can't comment on it.
Take a swipe at reporters. I think Army.
My biggest question for him on that will not necessarily be about Parayko specifically, but more about how he handles the deadline with the no trade clauses.
I'm with you.
Asking directly, hey, how do you handle this with players that have no trade clauses? Do you go to them first? Do you revisit the way that you've done that in the past? And how do you think that impacts how Alex Steen does business in the future?
And look at how John Carlson thing went down overnight. Like, nobody saw that one coming. Carlson woke up overnight, and apparently that deal had been in the works for about 10 hours. They were waiting until midnight for that roster transaction thing to carry over, and John Carlson found out it wasn't leaked until the deal was made. That's how deals are supposed to go down. I actually think, once again, we talked about this yesterday, this looks worse on Buffalo's side because I think that's where the leak probably had come from. I wonder how many teams are willing to make deals with teams like that because of those.
Yeah, I mean, this is the way it works. It's the deadline. It's a dirty, nasty business, but the Blues also, like, there's a chance that they trade Oscar Sundqvist today. He just had a baby a week ago.
Yeah, they traded Bukestad on the Dead's trip.
Yeah, like it's
brutal.
It's a tough business, man.
It's a hard life out there.
But these guys know it, and they're paid handsomely to be able to deal with that. And that's why guys want the no trade protection, to be able to make their own decisions on where they're going to be living. All right, so a lot of speculation out there. Nick Kypreos had his piece earlier today. JR had a piece earlier today. Elliot Friedman had a piece as well.
Everyone's got pieces.
No doubt. I wanted to read a couple of things on players that could be made available at the deadline. I think they're both more likely to be offseason conversations than deadline decisions, Alex. Kind of similar to where the Blues are at. But if the Blues are going to make Thomas and or Kyrou available now or in the offseason, I think these are the kind of names that you would expect to be involved in those negotiations. Nick Kypreos on your guy, Simon Nemec, who has been your pet cat, I would say, for like 18 months. Guy that you've been trying to acquire for the Blues because you just don't know what his future holds in New Jersey. Young defenseman coming up on a contract extension negotiation. Quote from Nick Kypreos: "The Devils don't have to trade this player, but they are taking calls on him to see if they can hit a home run. It's probably unlikely that he's moved today, but the Devils are throwing this idea at the wall to see if they can get an offer that they can't refuse." Do you think Nemec is the kind of player that you would be targeting for Jordan Kyrou?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I would. I mean, he's 22 years old. He's a right-shot defenseman. He's big. He's got offensive upside. He's got 9 goals in 48 games for the Devils this season. He's very close friends with Dalibor Dvorsky. That's a core piece that you're shifting towards. So the rumor with Kyrou, at least from Stefan Rosner, who covers the New York Islanders, is that a deal was at least presented to the Islanders, and Kyrou would be going one way, and Keyshawn Aitchison, the former 17th overall pick, would be coming the other way, who's a defenseman. He's 19 years old and plays the left side, 6'2", 203 pounds. So I think those are the pieces that you're looking at if you're moving a Jordan Kyrou. And if New Jersey's dangling it, they want offensive upgrade, a young guy to play with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. That feels like it's a match made in heaven. Maybe it's not a deadline move, but that feels like it would make a ton of sense for both sides.
The other name that has suddenly been thrown out there, I don't know how many legs there are to this, but both Friedman and Kypreos brought him up, so I want to throw him your way, Alex. If the Leafs get a big move done on Friday, Matthew Knies is probably the player that we'll be talking about. With Brad Treliving looking to inject some excitement into his team, change the direction and shake it up, Knies is the player who doesn't have any trade protection and could possibly bring back a notable return. If he's not moved on Friday, it's a situation that we'll be talking about into the summer. Toronto needs to shake it up, and Nyes could help them achieve that. This is Elliot Friedman on Matthew Nyes. The chances of Austin Matthews getting traded right now are 0. William Nylander and John Tavares aren't going anywhere. I heard that some Matthew Nyes, and that to me is the Maple Leafs seeing if there is a massive offer that they cannot turn down. That's the only way that I could see this happening.
Yeah, Matthew Nyes, can we get Macklin Celebrini for him? Like,
I would think that's a Robert Thomas, Colton Parayko conversation starter as well.
Yeah, and if I'm the Blues, I'm not doing that trade. That doesn't make me any better.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. There's no point in me trading Robert Thomas to go get a winger unless I have another center in my mind.
What about Colton Parayko?
If it's Parayko and Kyrou, done deal.
In my opinion. Parayko and Kyrou for Matthew Nyes.
Done deal, in my opinion. That makes you better. Now, not on the defensive side, but I would imagine you're going to find ways to upgrade that. This is the part that I don't get with Toronto, and I'm just wondering why they're floating it. If you're trying to instill an excitement into the Toronto Maple Leafs fan base, why would you trade a 23-year-old guy who scored 29 goals last year?
I think it's all about certainty. Certainty, switching it up. It's this, like, hey, if you're trying to instill excitement and change things up here in St. Louis, why are you trading a 26-year-old center?
Because it hasn't been exciting for 4 years.
I would say the same thing is true for Toronto.
Yeah,
they haven't been able to get over the hump, and this is a way to potentially change things up.
And the guys that have not created excitement for the Toronto Maple Leafs have been Austin Matthews and William Nylander. Matthew Nyes has been probably the most exciting player they've had since Matthews and Nylander.
Maybe he's kind of stalled, though. And he's a really good player. I would not be upset about the Blues adding a Matthew Nyes. He's 23 years old, and he's close to a point per game right now. But he's also not a point per game. And he's at 16 goals in 60 games this season, which means he's on pace for about 20 to 25. That's not what they were hoping for. I think they were hoping for him to be more of a 30-plus goal scorer consistently in the NHL. And if he's not going to be that, maybe they say, you know what? We have some goal scorers here. Let's try to change the way that we have constructed this roster. They've been lacking on the defensive side for, 7 to 10 years?
Well, not just the defensive side, the goaltending side, too.
No doubt. So maybe the actual move there is something like a Benner plus Parayko. Maybe that's the kind of thing that they'd be looking for.
It could be, but I just personally feel like if I'm in the Toronto Maple Leaf shoes, that's not making my team. It's making my team better defensively in goaltending. It's not making them better offensively. Like if they had Mitch Marner still, and they said to go that route, that'd make a little bit more sense. You got the dynamic players. You're in win now. You trade a younger piece for the guys that could help you win now. This is a part like Toronto is just as stuck as St. Louis is stuck, if not more stuck, because they've got the superstars that aren't performing, where I'd argue the Blues don't really have those superstars. They're looking for their superstars. So, look, if Matthew Nyes is available, you call. I just think we're talking Thomas plus Parayko plus Binnington. And to me, any deal that's moving Robert Thomas for a winger doesn't make sense.
And all of this is offseason stuff. Mm-hmm. This is not typically what you're expecting at the deadline.
The Nemec one I feel like could be a deadline one. I don't know why you'd push that to the offseason unless you're maybe thinking we can get a better forward in return than Jordan Kyrou.
Because you don't have to do it right now.
Well, the other reason I would say it could be more likely, too, is because the Devils aren't a playoff caliber team right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, they may be more willing to do it. I would lean towards what you were saying, BK, that both of these scream off-season moves. But if you're the Devils and you're looking at it going, well, we don't care if we trade from our NHL roster today. We're probably not a playoff team. Why don't we get our offseason started early?
Yeah.
That's why I think the Nemec one feels more possible. I would agree with you there, Alex. I'd still lean it probably is offseason. But I would say it's like 60-40 it's off-season compared to like Nyes. I'd say it's like 95-5.
Yeah, I'm 99-1 in my opinion with Nyes. Like, I think the Devils... The problem with the Devils pulling off a Nemec move now is they're not in any desperation move like Buffalo or Utah is because, like Tebow mentioned, you're not really a playoff team. So I don't have to do it. Like, I think Utah circles back to Thomas today because, hey, we can get him. Let's just see if they're willing to negotiate a little bit more. You know, if you're Montreal, if you're Buffalo, you come back to the table and you come calling again. I don't think Devils are in that position. It's the Blues calling, saying, hey, you want to do this? Nope, sweeten the pot. Cool, we'll move on.
The other problem for the Devils is they just don't have the space to do it right now.
for
They
Kyrou?
literally couldn't add Jordan Kyrou under the cap.
You'd have to take a contract on.
Yeah, you'd have to take a contract on, and there's not many guys on their roster that make enough money to be able to make that possible. Like Dawson Mercer makes $4 million a year. That plus what their cap space is right now still doesn't quite get you to Jordan Kyrou's money. And Dawson Mercer isn't a guy that they're going to want to move.
Yeah, they got to move.
Everybody
Dougie
else
Hamilton.
has no trade protection.
Yeah, they got to get out of Dougie Hamilton's contract before they can make some type of forward move.
And he's got a full no move.
Yep.
So good luck. And he's a $9 million a year player for multiple years remaining. That's why, again, this goes back to that's an offseason move because they need to add that cap space. And with the cap spiking next year, then they'll be able to add the money. But right now, $8 million coming into their cap sheet, it's just not a realistic way for them to operate. So for the Devils, I don't think it's a realistic move right now. For Toronto, I don't think it's a realistic move right now. We've already seen what's happened with Buffalo. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I think these are teams that would be interested and would be willing to offer real capital for the Blues. I just don't think it's right now. And this is why I'm not panicking. I'm not panicking about where the Blues are at. I'm not panicking about what they're probably not going to be able to accomplish today. I will be talking about that stuff once we get to the offseason and curious to see where they turn and what kind of decisions they decide to make. I have never thought that these are really deadline decisions. You can explore it. You should explore it. But it's more realistic to do all of these types of things once you get to June, July, and August.
Yeah. We'll see. Like I said, it just really comes down to how desperate certain teams are. But I do agree with you that a lot of especially on Kyrou and Thomas, as aggressive as they are trying to move them, I think more willing teams come to the table in the offseason rather than 3 or 4.
All right, dealer's choice. I'll give you 3 different options, Alex. It's a Freedom Friday for you to choose.
Ooh, the first of the month, too.
All right, option number 1. We talked Dustin May and his future with the Cardinals.
We don't even need the other options.
Option number 2, Ricky Scoops is back. One of the best NFL insiders in the business, and he's got a couple of interesting tweets out, including a possible destination that surprises me for Max Crosby. That's option 2. We could get to some NFL quick hitters. Option 3, we talk about something related to the NHL. What are you choosing, Alex?
I'm choosing NFL.
Yeah, I kind of want to do NFL too. I talked about
There's nothing about hockey right now. I think we save the hockey for when news comes out.
Coming up next, I'll tell you which NFL contender is potentially going to land Max Crosby and a potential superstar talent that could go in return for Crosby in that trade. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Today is the NHL trade deadline. 2 o'clock is when the buzzer sounds. And one move that recently just happened, the Kings have traded forward Corey Perry to the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for a second-round pick. We'll keep you updated throughout the day today here on 101 ESPN if the Blues make any moves. And then also, Doug Armstrong will speak to the media at 3 o'clock. You'll be able to listen to that press conference live on the Fast Lane today. 3 o'clock will be when Doug Armstrong speaks to the media. Blues will be back in action today as well when they visit the San Jose Sharks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock with Alex Ferrario. Puck drop at 9 o'clock with Chris Carber and Joey Vitale. The Sports Update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Man, I was really hoping we wouldn't have to talk about anything other than the NHL today.
I was too. I was actually hoping when I picked my choose your own path that segment, I was really hoping an NHL trade would have broke.
Yeah, unfortunately it did not. So we're talking about Pretty Ricky. If you're unfamiliar with his work, one of the best in the business. He goes by Ricky Scoops over on Twitter. I don't know who the guy is. He's completely anonymous. I wouldn't give him the time of day, but he has been right on everything he's tweeted out for years now.
It's been Pretty Ricky in the NHL.
He's the guy to go to for free agency. He's the guy to go to for the deadline. He's amazing. And so he's tweeted out a few things today. Want to get your thought on these, Alex. First, what I had teased in our last segment. He's hearing that the Eagles have made Jalen Carter available in their pursuit for Raiders defensive end Max Crosby. Jalen Carter, potentially a trade chip that could be on the move to Las Vegas as the Eagles are seeking more pass rush help in the form of one Max Crosby.
Are you mispronouncing Jordan Davis's name?
Nope, Jalen Carter.
Now, I know he had injuries this season, but in what world do you trade Jalen Carter, who's younger and more cost-controlled right now?
He's not. He's up for a contract. That's why.
Okay.
Jalen Carter has 1 year left on his contract, and then he's going to get paid in free agency. My guess is he'll get like $25 million a year, maybe more. So if you're looking at that and you say, hey, on the other hand, we could get Max Crosby, who's already been paid and is a superstar level talent, and then we could trade A.J. Brown and get some draft pick compensation for A.J. Brown, and we can go get the next Jalen Carter or 70% of Jalen Carter. Love this idea for the Eagles. Yeah. Hadn't considered it, but it makes a ton of sense, honestly.
I don't think it makes sense for the Raiders unless you're going to
Jalen Carter's a stud.
But are you going to pony up for him?
Yeah. They've got all the...
And he's younger. He makes more sense.
That's true. And then you got a cheaper quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a win-win.
I think this makes sense for both teams. It's a really good trade.
Congrats all of the other teams in the race, because if you're offering up two first-round picks versus Jalen bleeping Carter, I'll take Jalen Carter.
Nobody else that I can think of off the top of my head has the trump card of, oh, yeah, you've got a Jalen Carter, here's what we've got. Because the other teams that I saw from Diana Rossini that were connected to Crosby today were the Ravens, which they wouldn't have that piece, I wouldn't think, to give up. And then the Cowboys, which they definitely don't have the piece to give up.
No, that guy was Micah Parsons.
Yeah, this would make a ton of sense. I love it from both teams' perspective. I think it's smart, and it's why Howie Roseman's viewed as the best GM in the NFL.
I mean, think about it this way. I would say he has, in terms of Jalen Carter, similar, maybe a little less, but similar trade value to Quinnen Williams. Those guys are some of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL right now. Quinnen Williams was traded at last year's deadline to the Cowboys for a first and a second round pick. So that's the kind of value that a guy like Carter would have on the trade market if he was just dealt individually. I would say that's pretty similar to the trade compensation that we've been hearing from Max Crosby. So I wonder if it's just a 1-for-1. Jalen Carter going to the Raiders, and in return they get Max Crosby.
It's rare to see a win-win, but I feel like that's a win-win in the NFL.
Similar to the Trent McDuffie deal earlier this week, where the Rams got what they needed, Chiefs got what they need.
Yeah, and I mean,
like, for everybody involved.
What would you rather have? Would you rather have the 19th overall pick in this year's draft and a first-round pick that's a unknown commodity in next year's draft? Although... Well, no, yeah, if you're the Eagles, it's going to be a late one versus a guy who comes into my team right now and makes a difference on the defensive side.
I get to build around him for the next 5 to 10 years and put that along with my number one overall selection.
Yeah, on top of Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers. Yeah,
It's a good way to start your build. All right, other updates from Ricky Scoops on Twitter.
Ricky!
Kenneth Walker III update. I've been told that the Chiefs are the current favorite to land the Super Bowl MVP. Giants also interested, but the Chiefs might be the highest bidder for his services. Makes sense. Saw a projection today that Kenneth Walker is only going to get like $5 million more than Travis Etienne over 3 years. It's like $1 million a year more. Yeah, if you've got that little of a gap between the two, just get the better player. And the better player right now, in my opinion, is Kenneth Walker III. I thought it would be a greater gap between the two, so Etienne would make more sense. If it's going to be smaller, though, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world for the Chiefs.
Best case scenario for the Chiefs, too, because you can make that move, fill that hole, and then use the 9th overall pick to either go get an elite defensive player or go get a wide receiver and fill the other hole and then hope that there's another difference maker for you at 29th. I mean, the Chiefs could essentially put themselves in a better position after this draft if they can sign that Kenneth Walker deal.
All right, last update. This comes from Ricky Scoops as well. We had 3 of them today. It's a nice day over on the Twitter sphere.
Well, except for NHL moves.
He's got an update on where Alec Pierce could be heading. Any guesses?
I saw a projection for this yesterday that had him, I think it was the Raiders that I saw. It was Raiders like 4 by $12 million or something like that.
He's going to get like $30 million. It's going to.
That's what it was. It was
people are going to be shocked by how much money Alec Pierce is going to get this offseason. It's going to be crazy.
I'm going to go Tennessee.
Ricky Scoops says it's been a great month for Patriots, not a politics tweet. And the spirit should continue as the Patriots are going to throw a bag at Alec Pierce. Could he take his place in a long line of gritty, gym rat, scrappy, lunch pail wide receivers that have called Foxborough home?
Boy, that would make a ton of sense.
Yep. Just released Stephon Diggs yesterday.
I think if I'm the Patriots, though, wouldn't you rather have Evans over Pierce?
Or
trade for A.J. Brown?
Giving up the pick, yeah.
It
sounds like it's going to be a huge haul for A.J. Brown.
Maybe.
The rumor today was a first and a third round pick. And they've rejected that. So if that's the cost, no, I'm not giving that up for A.J. Brown.
If you're the Eagles, though, I don't know if you're going to get what you want for him because teams know he wants out.
The Eagles are already getting trade offers of a first and a third, and they said no to that. So they're potentially going to get more than a first and a third round pick for A.J. Brown. Dude, the offers out there right now, it seems like people really hate this draft class based upon the trade compensation that we're seeing around the league today.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, looking at this draft class, as we've talked about, there's just not a lot of the premier positions. There's not a bunch of elite guys there. It's all of the off linebacker, stuff like that, cornerback. So it makes sense. I don't know. For me, it feels, I get it if you're the Patriots, right? Because wide receiver is definitely the room that you got to address. I don't know. Alec Pierce feels like the one that you sign him because he's the best receiver probably on the market that's younger than Mike Evans at 26 years old going into next year. Mm-hmm. You make this deal, you give him the bag, and then you look back on it in 3 years and go, whew, overpaid for that one. That's what this one screams to me.
Agreed. I don't think Alec Pierce is going to be worth whatever he signs.
Agreed.
I do think he's a good player, though. Over the last 2 years, he's averaged 22 yards per reception. He's maybe the best deep threat in the NFL right now.
Damn.
He's as good as anybody at going deep and getting it. That being said, he's also only had 70 or 85 receptions over the last 2 years. So he's not a high volume player. And if that's what you're hoping to get and paying him $30 million a year or more to be able to do that, it would be way too rich for my blood. But the Patriots have all the money in the world. This would line up with the rookie contract for Drake May. So they can make moves like this. This is the benefit of having a guy that is a superstar level quarterback on a entry level deal. When you've got that, you can go overpay for players like Alec Pierce. It's what the Bears have done. It's what the Chiefs did whenever they had Sammy Watkins and all those other players around Patrick Mahomes early on in his career. Now we're seeing something similar potentially from the New England Patriots. Those are your updates from our guy Ricky Scoops over on Twitter. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. It's a Friday, and on this show, that means it's Ask Us Anything. We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll go ahead and answer them right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joins us in 15 minutes. Let's start with this from the 636. BK, with Peloton's value going down faster than automobiles, are you still satisfied with owning one?
He doesn't even use his.
Yeah, I don't.
It rains. It's 20 degrees outside. He's like, I'm going to go run.
Yeah.
And then he complains to us like, oh,
It's freezing out here.
I don't want to go for a run. I'm like, don't you have a Peloton bike you could ride?
Well, yeah, but I like the outside.
I just love running, man. I do. I really enjoy it.
Man,
That's why I think you've got a problem.
I did 45 minutes on the treadmill on Wednesday, and
How'd you feel?
I was miserable. I was bored out of my freaking mind.
I hate running on the treadmill.
I hate running in general. I could run outside on a beautiful day like today and still hate my
What?
life.
Oh, really?
What's worse, running on a treadmill or running just circles around a track?
I would do the track.
I think I would vote
Treadmill's
treadmill's
worse.
worse too. But I mean, to me,
I'd
they're
get the
pretty.
track.
They're pretty similar.
I'll tell you what I'm starting to get into more, and now because my Adelaide, we bought her a bike for her birthday, and she's like loving it. I think I'm going to get into riding bikes this spring/summer because she
Katy
wants
Trail's great for
Katy
that.
Trail, Grants Farms Trail is incredible, and so like I think I'm going to get to that point where I go with her, and then we both ride bikes.
From the manager, Lou Brown. Guys, do you ever get frustrated with TMA getting into your time? Occasionally. It's not very often. They've actually been really great about it lately. If it's... I don't mind if they get us in at 11:05 or before. Once it starts getting into like 11:08, 11:09, then it's really hard to get, just to peel back the curtain, it's hard to get back onto clock before we get to the 12 o'clock hour because of the way that the breaks work. So that's where it gets a little tough. And if we have a guest at 11:30,
That's my part.
that's when it gets really tough. But I would say they've actually been really good over the last month or so about not doing that anymore. So, yeah, I don't really have any complaints.
I think we're typically in before 11:05 most times than not. I think the biggest part where it gets frustrating is when, like you mentioned, we have a guest or there's big news that went down and we want to react to it right away, and we have very little time in the first segment, and so you have to keep your ideas condensed.
314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. From the 801, guys, if Armstrong doesn't figure out a way to set up the future of the franchise, will these last 3 seasons add a stain to his legacy, according to the fan base?
Yes, I think fans are going to be critical of Doug Armstrong, and they're going to do the same thing they did with John Mozeliak, to where it was recency bias, to where you see the last 3 to 5 years and say you put them in a retool and then they never got out of it and went into a rebuild. They'll overlook the fact that from 2009 until 2022, this team was consistently a first-place team in the Central Division and always a Stanley Cup potential contender, and then still won a Stanley Cup. So, yeah, I think people are going to be frustrated with Doug Armstrong, barring what takes place between today and the offseason. To me, it shouldn't stain his legacy because he kept a continuous contender for as long as they did.
I don't think his legacy is going to be stained too much. I think there will be some that will point to it and say, look at where he got us. And he's kind of limping out the door like Mo limped out the door. Man, he won the first cup in franchise history. You can never live that down, right? Mo won a World Series. But A, it wasn't the first one. It was the 11th World Series. And B, a lot of people don't even give him credit for it. A lot of people point to, well, Jocketty's the one that drafted Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina. Though Mo made the moves, the necessary pieces they needed to help make that run. When you win the first one in your organization's history, you're a folk hero forever, and I think that's what helps him.
I agree with that. He'll be remembered more fondly, and it's because of that. But otherwise, I mean, the way they went out is pretty similar. Army's last 5 years and Mo's last 5 years are not dissimilar in any way.
And I do think Army's going to have a little bit more critics outspoken because of how he handled the legacy players that were a part of that Stanley Cup team. Alex Pietrangelo, Pat Maroon, Ryan O'Reilly, David Perron. I think that is going, and Colton Parayko with what just went down, although I don't think that one's going to be as bad as people are making it out to be.
I agree with you. I will say Mo's legacy is almost stained in the opposite direction, where he held on to those guys too long. So
I guess the question is, what's worse?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on your perspective of that.
I think what's worse for, and maybe if the Cardinals holding on to those guys for too long, you had the hope that you could get to that winning window, I guess. The problem with the Blues and why it would be more frustrating is And you probably could have done more winning right away with Alex Pietrangelo and Ryan O'Reilly and David Perron. And instead, you went into mediocrity, and then mediocrity took you into a rebuild if they get to that point.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Is Cam Ward already the best quarterback in the AFC South? Would you take him or
Daniel
CJ
Jones?
Stroud?
Danny Dimes is the best quarterback in the AFC South.
I'd take
CJ
Ward.
Stroud.
Stroud, I lost a lot of faith in after watching
I know
him.
you guys both hate Trevor Lawrence, so I'm not even.
I was going to say, what's it say? He didn't even bring up Trevor Lawrence and his guy, Anthony Richardson.
Well, I mean, come on.
I think he's the one. What's weird, though, is I think he's the one I would bet on to be the best right now. I don't know. He's close with Lawrence based on what Lawrence did last year.
It's too hard for me to be negative on CJ Stroud when I look at what they did to that team this past year.
I would say if you're starting a team and you're trying to build for the next 10 years, I would take Cam Ward.
Well, that's the smartest decision because he's younger and cheaper.
If you're trying to win just in 2026, I'm putting up a team and my goal is exclusively, I'm not thinking about the future. I'm only thinking about this year. I think I would go CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence over him.
I agree.
And that's not a shot at Cam Ward. I think he's going to be really good. But for right now, I would say no. I don't think he's already the best quarterback in the AFC South. Could get there very soon, though. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 314, if the Blues don't have multiple first-round picks by the time that the draft takes place, do you think that the deadline would be considered a failure?
No, because I don't care if they have multiple first-round picks. I care about what you did to your pipeline. I care about what you did to your young crop of players and if you made any difference, or your NHL roster. You could tell me they have 4 first-round picks in this upcoming draft, and I would be like, that's not that great, because none of those guys are going to help your team for 3 to 5 years, and I would much rather go out there and get guys that are already drafted and developing towards an NHL roster.
Yeah, I don't think it's about the number of picks you have that determines if the deadline / part 2 of the deadline, the offseason, is a success. It's kind of what Alex is saying. If they have 4 first-round picks, I'd be like, wow, that is kind of exciting. I think it just is, okay, who's on the roster, and did they move on from those guys, and did they set themselves up better for this rebuild that they're about to go into?
From the 314, give me a scenario where the Cardinals make the playoffs.
Well, BK's been telling you that for the last 3 weeks.
Brayden,
Great pitching staff, an offense that's better than what they had last year.
I've got you.
Yeah. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
No, we're not doing Cardinals today. Let's move on. That's the rest of the
Coming up.
That's the rest of the 6 months after.
Part 1, what we have seen from the rotation in spring training is real. Dustin May is going to return to form. He's healthy again. He's ready to go. He's pumping 98 regularly. Matthew Liberatore is able to maintain velo this year. Richard Fitz comes in and looks the part of a legit number 3 starter. Michael McGreevy stabilizes things and gives you innings as a number 4. And then between Palante, Leahy, Matthews, all the other guys that are currently going to start at the AAA level, Bryson Motts, Dobbins, Eshawn Henderson, etc., they provide the depth that's necessary. Rotation is like 15th in the league, an average major league starting rotation. Your lineup. Herrera takes the step. He hits 25-plus home runs and averages roughly 300. Alec Burleson is close to 300 hitter, hits 25 home runs as well. Nolan Gorman takes the step, hits like 250, strikes out too much, but hits 35 bombs. J.J. Weatherholt comes in and is immediately basically just Brendan Donovan 2.0. Jordan Walker is league average as a hitter and solid defensively. Victor Scott steals 50 bags. Lars Nootbaar returns healthy and is just the player that he was 2 or 3 years ago, because he's healthy finally again. Mason Wynn takes the step, hits about 280, hits for a little bit of pop as well. You get all those things, it's a lot of ifs. You're a playoff team. Congratulations, Cardinals.
Yeah, I think that's probably what has to happen. And the fact that there's that many ifs tells you they're not going to be a playoff team.
You sound like me telling you in October of how the Blues could be a playoff team.
They had fewer ifs, I think.
I remember
they had a lot fewer ifs.
The count the ifs thing that I talked about with the Mizzou football team going into the season. The Cardinals have like 15 ifs. You want the fewest number of ifs possible with the team. Yeah. The Cardinals have a ton. The Blues had like 3 this year, and it didn't necessarily go their way.
All 3.
All 3 failed massively.
Yeah. Somebody said, that's it. Yep, that's it.
That was it. Yeah.
What a season it's going to be.
Like 3 minutes to give you all the Fs. Mm-hmm. Did you even mention the bullpen or no? I remember hearing a bunch of, like, they belong in it
if
too.
The bullpen's what we think they are. Bullpen should be good. I don't have a lot of questions about them.
I fell asleep when you said your pitching staff needs to be better than what it was last year.
I actually think of all of the things that I just said, that's the most likely. I don't think it's particularly likely, but that's probably the one that I feel the best about.
And
right
that
now.
was also the easiest thing, I think, to accomplish.
Yeah, just be 15th.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you got to be elite.
Just have one starter that's on the roster past May.
Yeah. So let's look real quick, and we'll talk to...
Dustin, I was like, what?
Come on, man. You'll get there.
We'll talk to Mike McKenna coming up here in just a little bit. I'm going to look last year, starting pitching rotation, ERA. Who was 15th in the league? Last year, it was Tampa Bay with a 4.0 ERA. All you have to do is have a 4.0 ERA as a staff. I don't think that's likely. Can they do it? Yeah. I mean, San Francisco was 17th last year. Arizona 19th with a 4.2. Boston was a 3.9. Cleveland had a 3.85. Cincinnati had a 3.85 as well. Again, I don't think it's likely.
I think I determined we can't do it.
Coming up next, Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline. I thought we would be discussing some kind of a trade with Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. Joins us each and every Friday on behalf of Macadoodles. Unfortunately, we got a whole lot of nothing.
This is going to be
out there, Mike. How you doing,
be a
man?
dud.
We didn't get a whole lot of nothing. We got a whole lot of discussion and a whole lot of interesting takes that came across off of yesterday's and the day before's speculation involving Colton Parayko, guys. I mean, this has been high drama.
Yeah, but we got our 24 hours out of that, Mike.
Yeah, and nobody wants drama anymore, Mike. We want trades. We want action.
Let's start with that, though, Mike. You've been in the league. You've seen stuff like this play out before. I don't think we've seen it as often as we are seeing it this year, though. It wasn't just Parayko. We've seen, I think, 4 or 5 different instances.
It was 5, I think, is what it was total, because Mangiapane had one.
In which a player was rumored to be dealt prior to actually waiving their no-trade clause. What did you make of all of this? What was your opinion on the matter?
I don't like that it became public, but that's not an uncommon thing when it comes to Parayko. The other factor, though, like you're talking about, so many people invoking their no-trade clause, it's just a byproduct of where contracts have gone. And, you know, when you're negotiating a contract, you're trying to get the most out of it you can. And during the COVID years, during the years in the last couple here, players are trying to get certainty. They're trying to get control over their destiny. And I think that's really what the no movement clauses, the no trade clauses have turned into, is not a mortal lock that you're going to stay in one city. What they're doing is effectively giving you control if the team wants you to be moved or if you need to move. So I actually think it's a nice way for players to have a bit of say and help. And obviously you negotiate for that right, and you probably take a lower dollar figure to get one of those trade clauses in it. I think we're going to keep seeing this. I just don't think it's going to go away with the number of trade-protected contracts that are out there. Personally, I love it when a player says no. And it's not just a drama factor. It's that you signed a deal to play for one team. That's who you want to play for. You love a city you're in. Your family loves the city you're in. You tell everybody to stick it. And I appreciate that.
So, Mike, in terms of the trade itself, what did you think of Doug Armstrong's decision to move Colton Parayko for what the report was that they'd be getting back in return?
I'm actually kind of ambivalent to this in some ways, because I think the Blues are, you know, not only looking to get picks and younger for things, and they're looking at Parayko at 30 and saying, where are the best years? Are they here? Can we get something out of them now? I completely understand it from Doug Armstrong's side that if you're going to sell high on a player, even if Parayko didn't have the best Olympics, it's something that every manager is going to face, is going up to that line, the point of no return. And on this one, it probably felt like, okay, this is the most we're ever going to get out of a trade for this player. It might be the time that we could do it. So let's try. Let's see what sticks against the wall. Colton ultimately said no. That's his right. Doug Armstrong respects that. But I completely understand why they'd be going for it, especially now if you thought you could get a haul for Parayko. And now, I mean, Justin Falk, guys, he's number 1 on Frank Saravalli's trade list. You know, so there's a potential for the Blues to do pretty well at this deadline here in the next couple of hours.
So that's what I wanted to get to with you next, Mike, is who do you think they actually need to trade at the deadline? Because some of the stuff they were doing previously, Thomas, Parayko, maybe listening on a guy like Jordan Kyrou as well, they could do that now. They can also wait to do any of those things until the summer. What do you believe is urgent? What do they need to do prior to 2 o'clock today?
I do think trading Justin Falk's going to make a lot of sense. I mean, you're looking at a first-rounder pick plus, I would guess, for a player that can score like he has and like he can, and also with a bit of certainty, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Falk's got 1 year left on his contract at a reasonable clip for teams, and that's the most valuable type of player. Somebody with 1 or 2 years remaining on a contract, that's cost certainty, that's guaranteed point output. He's number 1 on the list for this. And as you go further down, I think you can take what you get. I mean, somebody like Oscar Sundqvist, I've seen him on trade lists. If you can get anything for Oscar, honestly, I think you take it, because I don't know his health factor. If he can make it through another year, the rest of the year, next year, I don't even know. I think you've got to move what you can to retain it, to get the assets you need. I'd sure like to see the Blues get players in return, though, and not just draft picks, because if you do move Justin Falk, you're still looking at a bit of a hole on the back end, not a bit, on a team that's needed defense. So you'd like to see somebody younger with some upside come in along with a pick in that regard.
Mike, it's pretty evident for how much noise has been out there that the Blues are still actively looking to move. Maybe not actively looking to move, but actively listening on Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. We've had our discussions of should they move these guys, should they not move these guys. let's go down the path that they're able to accomplish moving them. Do you think that Doug Armstrong can get back the necessary return that would match the equivalent of trading away these guys?
I think Kyrie's an off-season deal. I don't think you can leverage his the best right now as a quick, I won't say quick decision, but something that you're rushing to get done before the deadline. With as many years as he has left on his contract, I think the Blues are better served if they were to try to move Kyrie to do it in the offseason. So you're getting a team involved that is able to surround him with the players that they need to get him to perform, to know what it looks like. I'm not 100% certain that Thomas is even in play. You know, I asked somebody the other day, is this real or a smokescreen? And this is somebody who I really trust within the world. And they said, oh, it's a smokescreen. Well, you already saw it with Parayko. That may have been it. The one that I wonder about, and I don't see it happening, but I just can't help but wonder about Jordan Binnington. I don't know where that material, where that market arises from. But teams do get weird about goalies, guys. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I could see that be a jaw on the floor moment where Montreal makes a play for Binnington. You know, that's the one thing in my mind that I don't think it's been possible, really. I don't think it's been likely for Binnington to move. But the right team, the right time, if it's the right deal, I could see it. There's a world where I could see it. I don't think the Blues are better off next season for it. I love this combo. But if there's a good deal out there for Jordan, I could see that it could happen.
Who do you think are the teams, Mike, that need a goalie?
Montreal, Edmonton every year, because they can't keep a goalie there. That's going to continue in perpetuity until they win a Stanley Cup. And then the next year the team falls off and doesn't do well, and they blame the goalie again. And then that guy gets run out of town again. I know that sounds a little bit condescending, but it's not camouflage for the situation that's happening in Edmonton every single year. So I think Montreal's a team that's going to be looking for it. Other teams that are on the outside in looking for this, I mean, who's really going to get a big bump out of this? I mean, Edmonton's always been the one that everybody's talked about. I could see Buffalo in the mix for a goalie even. I know Alex Lyon's been fantastic. But outside of that, guys, I don't think there's that many that are truly looking for goaltending. Vegas is always a wild card, though. That might be the one extra that I could throw into the mix.
God, please don't.
I don't want to.
I know. There's two teams I can't root for, Mike, if they make trades for Blues players. It's Colorado and it's Vegas. I just can't do it.
Well, it's an evil empire, but I could see a world where you swap Binnington for Aiden Hill. I can see that in a heartbeat out there.
Oh, I hate that.
I do too. I can't agree with you more.
I can't take on another contract for an underwhelming goaltender for 6 more years at $6 million.
Is that what he's at?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just as crazy as that club can, as aggressive, I should say. Crazy is not the right word for Vegas. They're just aggressive. They will do whatever they think is necessary. If they think they can win a Stanley Cup with Binnington over Hill at this stage or something, I would not be surprised to see something like that. I don't think it's likely. Yeah. I've never heard anything about this. I'm not giving you guys anything that's been out there. It's just something that could happen for that group.
No, you're just making me want to take Pepto-Bismol for the next 2 hours.
What do you think the price should be for a guy like Benner, Mike? I mean, if there's not a ton of demand out there for goalies, that typically suppresses the value. So what do you think we're looking at?
Oh, I mean, I think a goaltender like Binnington might get you a third-round pick, maybe a second if you're lucky in today's market. I think if you get anything higher than a third or second, you got to listen. If it's a fourth or lower, fourth is kind of like the absolute bottom and trying to get another player in the mix as well. I'd like to see a goalie come back. You would have to see a goalie come back, or it would be a three-way trade. I mean, otherwise you're kind of looking the boogeyman right in the face if you've only got one guy down the road, and you need somebody with a bit of contract left to go on it. So I think if you get above a second or third round for Binnington, and I think with his pedigree, that could be likely. I just don't see it. It's not a first-round pick, guys. I don't know. Do you see any world where that could be happening?
I want it to be, but no.
I mean, Ryan Miller got a first-round pick when he was traded, and Ryan Miller was viewed as the best goaltender, one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League.
He hasn't been playing particularly well this year. He has another year on his deal. It's not as though it's like a cheap contract. It's not it's not the worst thing in the world, but $6.5 million is real money for some teams, and they got to account for that again next year as well. Add all of that up, the lack of suitors potentially available for him. Yeah, I don't think they're getting a first. And one thing to pass along real quick, Mike, this comes from Jeremy Rutherford. Alex, I know you retweeted this as well. Blues play in San Jose tonight. Morning skate, according to Jeremy Rutherford, was canceled. Not altogether surprising, but noteworthy nonetheless.
I think it's dumb that teams play on trade deadline day.
It's brutal. Dude, I've seen it before. I've had teammates get pulled off the ice on trade deadline day. It happened to me when I was playing for the Portland Pirates. We had a defenseman that got yanked off the ice, and he got traded mid-game. And that's just brutal. And that's even in the minors. In the NHL, now you've got everybody taking out of the roster for roster management, everything. It's just not a great day. You're on pins and needles the whole time. And this filters. This is minor league guys. This is NHL players. You just want the day to be over so bad. There's no fun involved in today. No matter what, you're shaking up a team, and you're going to lose or gain somebody that you've played with before, and it's not going to be great. And if you got a family, then everything can be thrown in the blender.
Mike, we appreciate the time as always, man. Hopefully we'll get some news as we go along here over the course of the next couple of hours. What can people expect, though, if they need to drown their sorrows tonight with either great or bad news at the deadline? What can they expect as they walk through the door today over at McDoodles?
We've got all kinds of awesomeness up here at the corner of Bryan and Feisey Road. We're just north of the Page Extension here at McAdoodles. We are a beverage store. We have the widest selection of THC drinks in all of St. Charles County, and we got a new one today. Willie Nelson's Remedy just came through the door. I got 5 milligram, 10 milligram drinks in 4-packs. I got 750 milliliters of 5 and 10 dosages. We got shots of this stuff. We went really big on Willie because everybody loves Willie. It's his remedy. So that's our big one today. We've also had some bourbon drop recently. I got a couple of Old Carters in, and I tell you what, if anybody walks through the door today, says the word camouflage, rings the bell, I have a bottle of Old Forester 1924 for them to purchase.
Oh,
Not free, but to purchase. And that's at $124.97 here at McAdoodles. And we're looking forward to St. Patrick's Day because next weekend on Saturday, we've got an allocated raffle with 16 bottles up for sale and a wild card tastings all day long. That's next weekend. But this weekend, come get some Willie Nelson's Remedy.
Well, great, Mike. Now T-Bone and BK are going to leave the show for the rest of the time, and I've got this solo.
Old Forester is up there. If I was making a Mount Rushmore of my picks, that's up there for me. Anything.
I saw your
Anything
face.
they make, it's fantastic.
I saw your face.
Well, if you need anything, just come get some Fireball. That's always a standby.
That's another option. Mike, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next week.
That's great. You guys take care of yourselves. Go Blues.
Same to you. That is Mike McKenna. Appreciate his time joining us here on 101 ESPN on behalf of the fine folks over at McAdoodles. Alex, coming up next, we are less than 2 hours away. It's from the NHL trade deadline.
It's wild how silent life is right now. And it's a little bit, there's a little part of me that's it's alarming, and there's a little part of me that's like, man, something's going to go down.
Do you just need an NHL update right now?
I need some type of trade. Like my body internally.
Do you have one, T-Bone?
Jonathan Marshall's not on the ice for the Predators at practice.
Don't give me that.
Okay,
don't give me that trash.
But I just said he needs an update.
No,
I didn't
that's
tell
not
you what
the
it
fix
was.
I need right now.
I need your tone, Brandon.
I mean, come on. What are we talking about?
Coming from the guy that said, let's play the breaking news sounder when Kyle Gibson came off the IL a couple years ago.
Excuse me, did he sign with the Cardinals or did he
like
not
2
sign
years
with the
later
Cardinals?
when he was
2 years
awful.
later when it didn't matter.
Coming up
That was a
next,
fair retort.
Is this the calm before the storm, or is this just going to be what the Blues do at this year's trade deadline? How would you feel if 2 hours from now they announce exactly 0 trades? We'll get into that next here on 101 ESPN. Alex, less than 2 hours prior to the deadline, it's real quiet out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the shakes are starting to set in a little bit. Like, I need some type of move.
Maybe
I'm watching baseball over here.
Too quiet, some would say.
Quiet. I like what the
calm before the storm.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
I think they're going to trade Justin Falk today.
You are way more confident on that than T-Bone and I are.
Agreed.
I think that's going to happen. I'd be very surprised if we get to the end of the deadline and they say, no, didn't come to terms with anybody. We're keeping Justin Falk here. I think they've shown their hand. They don't believe that they're going to be good next year. They are ready to blow this thing up, whether it's now or at the trade deadline. They tried to trade Colton Parayko. I believe they were having real talks about Robert Thomas. I 100% believe that. I don't think the amount of smoke that was out there, I don't think that happens unless they were seriously considering a big move there. I think Schenn they're going to have talks about. I think Bennington they're going to have talks about. We'll see if anything comes out of it. With Justin Falk, he's a classic deadline move. You always see guys like this moved, especially given their situation.
If he was a pending free agent, I'd agree with everything you just said. He's not, though. And JR tweeted this out, and this is why I don't believe, unless they pay the right price for Falk that Doug Armstrong believes, I think there's a real shot he's here after the deadline. Army back in December said, quote, "We're not selling 50 cents on the dollar out of anger. We're not considering trading players less than the value we think that they're worth. I need other teams to think that our players are better than they are, and other teams want me to think they're worse than I think they are, and that might never happen." I think there is a real chance nobody is willing to pay the price for Justin Falk because there are other pieces out there. Mackenzie Weegar went for 3 second-round picks. Rasmus Ristolainen is out there right now. I think Doug Armstrong, total speculation, has a price set for a borderline NHL player like what Zach Whitecloud was that went to Calgary for Rasmus Anderson, and nobody pays it. He's not trading Justin Falk, and I think that is a massive mistake.
What would be the reaction if that's what they do?
That would be labeled, in my opinion, a failure of a deadline. I will give him an F because you cannot walk away from this deadline with the same roster you went into the deadline with. Now, I know there's guys that have trade protection. I know guys can have a say in it. Falk, Suter, Sundqvist don't. And your team has been bad this season and for the last 4 seasons, and to deliver the message to a fan base of nobody met our asking price, you're delivering the message of there's a chance we just return with the same roster next season. And, man, I don't think people have an appetite for that. So,
do you think that's the message, or is it we're going to return with this team for the rest of this season? Because I don't think they're returning with a similar team next year. That would be.
I don't think teams are going to pay the price Doug thinks he's getting for these players because they know Doug is trying to get rid of these players.
Yeah, I think he's lost some leverage when it's pretty much publicly known that they are looking for a significant shakeup on guys like Thomas and Kyrou. Like, you don't have to cave to his asking price for those guys
Doug
now
also
or the
doesn't
deadline.
have to cave. That's my thing.
Totally, but you know what happens when you don't want to cave and they don't want to cave? Nobody makes a move and you're stuck with the same roster.
Yeah.
And they
Western
don't get
standoff.
any better.
Unless somebody becomes desperate for a 26-year-old center like Robert Thomas, or a 27-year-old winger like Jordan Kyrou, or a 32-year-old defenseman that's 6'6", big reach, can play against the best players in the NHL like Colton Parayko. Like, I'm in full agreement with you guys. The Blues are asking for a lot, as they should. I don't think that they've lost points of leverage, though. Their leverage is we have good players. You want good players. You have to give us the price that we're asking for. And if you don't, we'll keep them because we still have 5 years of control over them.
And I think that's true for Thomas. I think that's true for Kyrou. I think that's true for Parayko. That's not true for Justin Falk.
Agreed, which is why I think they're going to trade Justin Falk. If they don't, though, I would be disappointed. I agree with you on, I think Falk is the outlier in all of these conversations. He's 33. I don't know that you can anticipate he's going to have the same year next year that he's having this year because really in his time with the Blues, this is somewhat of an outlier. He is, I would say, at his peak level of value. And this is the kind of like with relievers at the deadline. They strangely become more valuable at the deadline than they are in the offseason because people need them more at the deadline than they do in the offseason, and there are fewer options. That's defensemen. Defensemen become more valuable at the deadline because you can kind of plug and play them. That's not always the case with goalies. That's not always the case with like top 6 centers because there's so much chemistry that's necessary for those guys. With the defensemen, especially like a Justin Falk, just ready to go.
Yep.
Second line player, put him in for 18 to 20 minutes a night, and you can win with that immediately.
Yeah, I'm with you.
They've got to make that move.
You also play the lottery game if you go into the offseason, too, of free agents and other names becoming available. It's why I said earlier, a couple of weeks ago, like, you have to move him at this deadline because more defensemen become available that other teams are willing to pay more for than what you're asking. And I told T-Bone this in the office before the show, and I won't be hypocritical here because I said multiple times, like, Heim needs to lower his asking price on Brendan Donovan. I do think the Blues at some point are going to have to lower their asking price for Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. Now, right now, it's set uber high, and I understand that. But other teams can also see the struggles that Jordan Kyrou has had, the inconsistency of putting the puck in the back of the net. Other teams have seen the inconsistencies of Robert Thomas and the inability to stay healthy for an entire season. Like, other teams see that. The report from the Islanders of they're not willing to give up their top prospect on the defensive side for Jordan Kyrou. Man, at some point, you're playing that old Western standoff where both sides are waiting, and you do fall into the category of, well, we're going to have to come back with them because we set our standards too high for these guys. Man, you've done that for 3 years. Kyrou is no trade clause was enacted. Robert Thomas has not taken that step into superstardom that you thought he was going to. At some point, you are going to have to make some type of decision of where your team is at. I'm not saying you need to do it today at the deadline, but I am saying that if you get to the lottery or the draft next year where you're actively looking to move them and teams aren't willing to pay the price that you have set, man, then you're going into the season saying, well, we couldn't get it, and the return continues to diminish.
And I don't know that I agree with that. I think the return could actually go up because you said what I think is important with Thomas. He hasn't proven an ability to stay healthy over the last couple of years.
Yeah, but man, he was the most productive player in the National Hockey League post Four Nations.
But they weren't looking to trade him last year.
Well, I know.
So
but
coming off of that, I think they would have gotten an absolute haul if they had made him available last summer. They didn't want to, nor should they. Because of what you just said, he was the most productive player in the league coming off of the Four Nations face-off. So why would I trade this guy? I think that I'm going to be good again in 2026. Let's go ahead and make a push here. That's why they went out and signed a guy like Pius Suter in the offseason. And they felt like, hey, Holloway takes another step. We've got Snuggerud now. We've got Broberg taking another step. We've added somebody like a Logan Mailloux who maybe changes up the mix on the defensive side of things. They shouldn't have traded Robert Thomas a year ago. This is the first time, in my opinion, that they've really even considered doing so.
Agreed.
So you're doing so right now at what is maybe his lowest value that he's had in the last few seasons. So if people aren't willing to match that price, then you shouldn't trade him because it would be a lower price potentially than you could get next year. I think Robert Thomas is more likely to get back to what he has been than what he's been this year. And if that's what it takes to get the bigger asking price, then I would wait. I would wait till he proves that once again on the ice. I would say the guys that I would feel more in line with that on, like, hey, you might have to lower your price. I'd say Brayden Schenn fits into that category. I would say Pius Suter potentially fits into that category. Justin Falk fits into that category. Maybe a guy like Cam Fowler, if you can move on from him, just take what others are willing to give you for him. Maybe even a Jordan Bennington, I would throw that out there with. I would not say that about Robert Thomas. I would not say that about Jordan Kyrou, and I certainly wouldn't say that about Colton Parayko. Those guys, to me, are the difference makers that if they are just going to be here again next year, I'm fine with it. Maybe I'm an outlier among Blues fans in that regard, but I don't see any urgency whatsoever to trade any of those players.
I'm with you on Thomas and Parayko. I'm not with you on Kyrou.
Kyrou's one I separate on.
You got to make a change at some point.
I think depending on what you're doing with Thomas, Parayko could fall into that as well. Like if Thomas gets dealt, then I think Parayko becomes a guy I'm willing to lower the ask on as well. Because at that point, you're clearly in a rebuild once you trade Robert Thomas. As long as Thomas is here, I'm with you. I would still stick high on Parayko's asking price.
If the best offer you get is like a first-round pick for Colton Parayko, you're taking that?
No, I'm not taking that.
I would just rather have Parayko.
I already know what the standard is for Colton Parayko with Murtka and a first-round pick. That's what I'm putting the standard at.
That was when he was willing to go potentially to another place that was desperate for him. Now he gets to pick and choose. When he gets to pick and choose, and maybe it's only 3 teams that are that he's interested in, he gives you, hey, here's my list of 3. That dries up some of the offers because now he has all of the leverage, which means those other teams have all of the leverage, and they get to offer you what they want. Maybe they say, we'll take him. Give you a first-round pick for him. And then another team says, we'll give you a second. And then the third team says, he doesn't fit into what we're trying to accomplish here. Age, cost, we can't fit him into our current build. You just taking the first-round pick, or are you saying I'm running it back with Colton Parayko on my roster? I just run it back.
I'm running it back with Parayko.
Depending on what else you do, I might just cave. I might take the first round pick because I disagree on you can't just return with everybody back on the roster. Like, I don't think you have to change this thing up.
I agree, but I think changing this thing up could look like moving Brayden Schenn, moving Pius Suter, moving Justin Falk, moving Jordan Binnington.
I think it's got to be more than those guys. I mean, that's not the core. I think the core needs to be changed. I think the core is the problem, not the supplementary pieces. And that's where I would say, that's what I mean when I'm saying run it back. I'm saying this core cannot be back on the opening night roster.
But a lot of the core would be changing. Like, we're talking about what they've done for the last 4 years, right? That's really what we're referencing when we talk about how they failed.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 4 years of failure. Well, Jake Neighbors hasn't been here for most of that. Dylan Holloway hasn't been here for most of that. Philip Broberg hasn't been here for most of that. Logan Mailloux hasn't been here for really any of that. The guys that you're bringing in return for any of these trades that I was just talking about, they hadn't been here for any of that. A guy like Jimmy Snuggerud hasn't been here. Dvorsky hasn't been here. We're really talking about 3 players that have been here through those failures, and it's Thomas, Kyrou, and Parayko.
The 3. Well, I would put Booch into that as well.
Sure, but he's just a different conversation entirely. So we're talking about 3 guys that have been here through those failures. I think you can change a lot of stuff around those 3 players. You're talking about $22 million towards your $100+ million cap. If you can't work with that other $80 million to improve the roster around them, man, that's on the ownership and that's on the front office as much as it is on those players, in my opinion.
I just don't see those 3 guys as guys that I want to build around. Like, I don't think they are. I think they are a big part of the problem, and I don't think they can be built around to be building a winning team.
You don't think you can build around Robert Thomas to build a winner?
No, I don't. I think Robert Thomas, I've talked about this before. I'm not sure he's a number 1 center on a on a contending caliber team, but I think he's just a little bit better than a 2. I think he's somewhere stuck in between that, and I don't think he's a guy that you can build around. I don't think so. I think you need a legitimate number 1 center.
Not with the system you have right now.
Having him on the roster does not preclude you from going and getting a number 1 center.
Well, it kind of does because, one, you're either paying a lot of money in free agency, which I don't think team players would want to come here, or you're drafting those guys and you either strike gold with a late pick, which they've had success with, but they haven't turned into superstars, or you're not going to be bad enough to get a...
You can be bad enough. We've seen they're bad.
They're bad now. Where have they picked over the last 3 years?
In the middle of the first round or top 10. They got a top 10 pick and picked Dalibor Dvorsky.
And the top 10 pick was when they traded away 3 pivotal pieces of that roster.
That's what I'm saying they should do. They should trade Brayden Schenn. They should trade Justin Falk. They should do these things. They should overhaul the roster. They should trade Jordan Binnington.
Schenn, I'm with you, changes some things. Binnington, I as much as I love Jordan Binnington, I don't know how much that changes because Joel Hofer's got the net right now.
I'm open to trading Colton Parayko if the offer is right. I'm just not willing to sell him for nothing.
You handed the reins over to Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich when they moved on from Ryan O'Reilly.
Absolutely.
And this team has underperformed since then. You've got to shake things up. When Doug Armstrong has addressed the core of this team, he has not mentioned the Thomas and Kyrous. Now, maybe it was an omit from just forgot, but he mentions Neighbors and Snuggerud and Dvorsky and Broberg and Holloway. I believe they view that next core as the next group. Can you build around the guys here? Sure. But I think if you just come back with Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich as the main guys and then all of these other pieces, I think you're setting yourself to do the same thing again next year.
Let me ask you this real quick as a follow-up on that, because if you're trading if you're trading Colton Parayko, let's say it's similar to they get basically the equivalent to the return they were about to get. 19-year-old defenseman and a first-round pick. That first-round pick is likely to be somebody that is a bottom-of-the-roster type of a player because it's going to be at the end of the first round most likely, right? We agree with that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of more of what you've already had. We've seen what that looks like. It's not good enough. That 19-year-old defenseman, maybe he becomes a really good player. The odds are that's going to take 3 to 5 years, minimum. Let's say you then trade Jordan Kyrou, and it's like a Nemec or something like that they're getting in return. He's like a second pair defenseman, good player. You already have stuff like that already on your roster, though, and that's like the marquee piece that you get for Jordan Kyrou. So really, what you're saying is completely overhauling this roster is the Thomas return, right? In the immediacy.
Yeah.
And that Thomas return, you're getting a few prospects, maybe that first-round pick, again, kind of similar to the Parayko deal. That's probably not a guy that's really changing your roster a ton next year. Probably going to take a while for that. How are you getting that number one center that we're talking about?
But I think you're underselling the return for Robert Thomas. If they get the return that has been reported from Utah, you're not just getting a few prospects. You're getting a potential number one center.
But there's no guarantee of that whatsoever. He's every bit as likely to be a number one center on a contender, maybe less so than Robert Thomas is.
Yeah, but there's every
there's
every guarantee that he's better than
not.
Robert Thomas.
There's no guarantee of that at all. But the odds of that are extremely low.
But this is it. You're
man.
at a crossroads right now where you're 50-50 of like, there's no chance that the guy you acquire in this move becomes better than Robert Thomas. But there's no chance you keep Robert Thomas and your team gets better and you keep doing the exact same thing.
And I guess that's where we disagree. I don't think by keeping Robert Thomas, you are locking yourself into this kind of futility for years to come. I think by keeping Robert Thomas, you open up the possibility that with a better supporting cast, I've got a number one center in place. If teams are willing to, across the league, give you the kind of return that you're talking about, Alex, then other teams view Robert Thomas as what I'm saying here. So they're willing to make that bet that Thomas can be a number one center, or at least something approaching that. And if you're getting rid of him, you are going into the abyss that teams across the NFL are in when they don't have an NFL quarterback. They don't have a legitimate starter on their roster. You got nothing. If you trade Thomas and Parayko and Benner, we are talking about a team that lacks a number one center, a number one defenseman, and a number one goalie that can win you games in the playoffs. Maybe Hofer becomes that. I don't know. But if you trade those pieces, you are without the three building blocks for a contender in the NHL. Man, it's going to take a long time to get back there.
Well,
you're talking about a legit 3 to 5+ year rebuild.
I'd argue you have a couple of those guys potentially already in-house. I mean, you don't think Broberg's looks like a number one defenseman?
Maybe.
You don't think
need
Hofer?
multiple.
You don't think Hofer looks like a number one goalie?
I have no idea.
I'm not willing to go there yet because I don't think he's got a save percentage above 900.
Well, but I also don't know what he looks like in the playoffs. So like that one's up in the air. But you're never going to know that with a goaltender. Like I know Binnington's it, but look
at where Binnington came from.
Well, also, like, you can't get to the playoffs if your goalie's not great in the regular season. We've had these arguments in the past. The number one center is the argument that you're making. And in the scenario that I am trading Robert Thomas, I'm trading for a potential number one center that has already been drafted, that has already been scouted, that has already been starting the development process. And I view the scenario that they're in right now, I don't think it's as easy as going out there and finding a better piece to play with Robert Thomas that makes your team better. Those guys either don't make it to the free agent market, or if they do make it to the free agent market, there's about 10 other teams that are on their priority list before you even get to St. Louis. And you don't have a selling piece of, I want to go to St. Louis as a free agent. Your team is underperformed. You're not going to throw in no movement clauses. And I don't believe this team will go up to the $12 or $13 million mark to go signed that guy. So you're talking about trading for him, which we're already having these conversations of the pieces you have in place aren't good enough to get those types of players. So you're going draft, which, hey, you could get one. I am fully on board with the fact that you could get a difference maker in this year's draft. But you're also going to have a team that could actually be competitive still and put yourself in a 6th or 7th spot in the draft. Or you're talking about really striking gold with those guys.
Or trading.
Who are you trading for those guys?
I don't know. Well, some of these assets that we're talking about right now. But I don't
think these assets are viewed as pieces that would warrant another team to trade a difference maker winger.
Then why are you trading your difference makers for those assets?
Because I'm trying to find a younger difference maker that's going to develop into the guy. What Nick Suzuki became when Montreal acquired him was a number one center.
Sure.
They didn't have it, and they said, let's go out there and find that guy.
But wouldn't you be making the same kind of a trade for somewhere else? Like if I'm trading Jordan Kyrou for these assets.
But I don't think Kyrou is going to get you. The only guy that I think can get you that type of return is Parayko, which we saw Buffalo do, which I don't know if Buffalo is desperate. I think the only guy that's going to bring you back that type of return is Robert Thomas.
Sure. Then for these wingers that we're talking about, they might not get that kind of return either. Like if Robertson is made available this offseason, what do we think he's getting? Not from the Blues, but just in general. What do we think that the Dallas Stars can reasonably ask for?
I mean, Martin Necas got Mikko Rantanen.
Mikko Rantanen was also coming up on unrestricted free agency in 2 months.
I understand that, though, but
and
like
only
that's
had
the
a few
type
places
of player
that he was willing to re-sign.
Sure, but those are the guys that potentially get moved. And when they get moved, teams like that strike. Matthew Tkachuk was traded for a 100-point player and a difference-making defenseman. That's the level of difference maker I'm talking about, and I don't think those guys become available.
I'm talking about Jason Robertson, though. Like, Robertson is the kind of player that very well could become available this offseason. And so my question is, what do you think that he's potentially going to command?
A player that comes back in return that fits into the top 6 for them.
So like a Jordan Kyrou.
Jordan Kyrou's not
that
getting
level of a player.
Sure, but Jordan Kyrou's not getting that value right now on the market.
Agreed. But if Jordan Kyrou is the kind of player that they would potentially target, along with probably picks and or prospects in return, the Blues can make that deal in the offseason. If Matthew Knies becomes available in the offseason, I have no idea.
That's not, I mean, in my opinion, that's not Kyrou. If you want Matthew Knies, you're trading Robert Thomas.
Okay.
Like, that's the level that you're doing.
The reason that I'm bringing up these players, Alex, is because that's the direction that I would prefer they go. I think there are a couple of different paths that they can go down. What you're saying here is not wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
and I are just on different paths of what direction they're going.
Absolutely. There are a number of different directions that the Blues can take. They can just run it back. I'm not suggesting they do that either. I would not be in favor of that. Or they can go down kind of the middle path, which is what I would probably be arguing for, is not building around the guys that are 30 plus, but retaining some of the 26 or 27-year-olds and just not going full rebuild. Alex's path is closer to the full rebuild, not getting rid of the 23 to 25-year-olds, but basically everybody above that, you got to go because we've tried it and you failed. It's time to move on and go in a different direction. And that is absolutely a path that they could be going down this offseason. For me, I would just rather build down the middle path because I do think there is an easier way back to contention quicker in that scenario. And I am not, this is crazy. I can't believe we've arrived at this place. I am not ready to admit failure on Robert Thomas just yet. I'm not there yet.
Separate on those paths.
And that's the decision point, really, is how do you feel today about Robert Thomas? Can he still be a number one center for an NHL contender? If your answer is yes, you still think he can be, then I think you've got to continue to build around him, unless you just get completely blown away. If your answer is no, though, you don't think he is that, then yeah, you should probably follow Alex's path, which is getting the best assets possible either right now or, more likely, in the offseason, and that kicks you into a full rebuild because once you trade Thomas, you should trade Parayko. You should trade Bennington. You've got to trade Brayden Schenn. You've got to trade Pius Suter, and now you're going and building around Jake Neighbors, Jimmy Snuggerud, Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg. That becomes your core, and you're probably bad for a few years, but whatever. We're building around these 23 to 25-year-olds.
I know we need a break, so I'll make this point quick because I think we just nailed it. Like, we're just on different paths. I would love to be on your side of this path. I would love if next season they're able to trade Kyrou plus picks for Jason Robertson, because to me, that's how you can stay a little bit more competitive. You got a system that can bring up the complementary pieces. I just don't believe they can get there. And in my opinion, this team is stuck. And I think by the time they could actually fix the problem and build around Robert Thomas is going to be closer to 30 years old. And I don't know how many more prime years you have of that. And I just don't view him as a superstar difference maker. At some point, you have to be honest with it and say, we don't have it. It might be time to go out there and try and find it.
Yeah, I think they're where the Cardinals are kind of right now. And that is, to me, they don't have a guy to build around right now. And that's why I get to the path that Alex is on. And I agree with him 100% what he just said there. To me, you look to move him and you just restart this thing and then see, maybe you don't have the number one center and you don't really know who it's going to be. You know what? I've got a couple of years to figure it out. I'm in a rebuild. I think that's the path you have to go.
He's T-Bone. That's Alex. I'm BK. Coming up next, we will give you an update on where things stand with the NHL trade deadline. It's really quiet out there.
There is a great segment for absolutely nothing happening behind us.
I think there's one move that might have just gone down. We'll get into that coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with the Sports Center update brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. Today is the NHL trade deadline, and the buzzer sounds at 2 o'clock. We'll keep you updated on the deadline throughout the day today here on 101 ESPN. Doug Armstrong is expected to speak to the media at 3 o'clock, and you'll be able to hear his press conference during the Fast Lane today live on 101 ESPN. And then later on tonight, the Blues will be back in action as they visit the San Jose Sharks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock with Alex Ferrario. Puck drop at 9 o'clock with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Universal Windows Direct.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's just do a news roundup. We've got a lot of stuff happening.
Let T-Bone announce the trade that he just told us.
Oh boy. Nick Deslauriers to Carolina Hurricanes.
That's what I wanted. Nick Deslauriers. That's what I was hoping for, big boy.
Could have done the Bobby McMahon one better.
I think there are like 6 different things that have happened in the last 20 minutes. We just happened to go on a very long segment about the St. Louis Blues. So we'll go ahead and wrap up a lot of what's taking place, NHL and NFL related. Let's start out with this. Pagnotta says Calgary and Montreal are talking about a potential Nazem Kadri deal, Alex. He's told that it might include Patrik Laine.
That's a great move if Montreal can pull that off because they get their centerman. Obviously, Nazem Kadri, I don't believe, is a number 1. He's a really good middle 6 guy, but that's probably what you need with a Nick Suzuki. And if they can get off the Patrik Laine money for the rest of the season, I wonder what else you're putting in that because you got to put a decent prospect if you're getting Kadri, but you're also giving up Patrik Laine and $8 million this season. So that one will be a really interesting one, but makes Montreal better.
Another one that's expected to go down is Bobby McMahon, potentially heading to the Colorado Avalanche. 19 goals in 60 games this year. He's been spending a decent amount of time on their top line. Has been relatively productive, a consistent 15 to 20 goal scorer. Potentially going to the Colorado Avalanche. Somebody, I think it was David Pagnotta, mentioned, hey, watch out for a potential. We'll see what the future holds for Ross Colton if this does go down.
The BK and Ferrario Golden boy.
They've been looking to trade him basically since the moment that they acquired him.
He has not panned out the way I thought he was going to in Toronto. Or not in Toronto, in Colorado. I love the Bobby McMahon one. I really wonder the rest of the National Hockey League's not getting overly aggressive at this deadline because they see what Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota have done, and they're like, what are we even going to try for? Like, we'll make minor moves, make ourselves good, and then if we get there, we'll see what happens. I love this move for Colorado. Bobby McMahon, a really good middle 6 guy that can play up if he needs to, on top of Nick Waugh, on top of Brett Kulak. They have made their team elite, middle to bottom 6, and defense, and goaltending is going to probably be the reason that they get bounced in the playoffs.
NFL-related news, Taylor Decker, left tackle for the Detroit Lions, just announced on Instagram that he has requested and will be released by the Detroit Lions. Taylor Decker, I believe, was the longest tenured player on the Lions. He was hoping to get a new contract extension done with them. He is 32 years old. They decided, no, we can't do that with you. He said, okay, then go ahead and release me. And it sounds like that is expected to happen. So they now have a hole at left tackle. Remember a couple of years ago, they go to the NFC Championship game and lose. And afterwards, you heard Dan Campbell say the reason that this hurts so much is because you never know when you're going to get back. This is why. Their window might have already opened and shut within a 2-year stretch.
Didn't they just walk away, too, from another offensive lineman, Glasgow?
He was a guy that I think had some injury issues. But,
okay. And then, of course, their center or whatever retired.
That was the Bears.
Traded David Montgomery.
Yep.
No, they're didn't they have another center that retired last year? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like 3 of those pieces of their offensive line are gone. So you're absolutely right. Like Detroit still has incredible playmakers. I still trust Dan Campbell, but yeah, it is starting to dissipate in terms of the chances of this team being a Super Bowl contender.
Sticking in the NFC North, Rashawn Gary, edge rusher for the Packers. This one's a bit of a surprise. He had a huge cap hit, due $19.5 million this year. That's coming off of the books now because he's been released by the Green Bay Packers. About $11 million in cap savings. Could be $19.5 million if it's designated a post-June 1 cut. Don't worry about the semantics of it. They cut him. he's going to be going elsewhere. He's hitting the market. Alex, I think he immediately becomes one of the best edge rushers available in this year's market, and it's a pretty good edge rush market, honestly. Yeah. I really wonder where he ends up. I obviously will put my Chiefs hat on. I think he makes all the sense in the world for them. The Rams are another team. You could make a case for them. Rashawn Gary's a good player. He's not a number one edge rusher guy, but he can help somebody.
Yeah, and now that we have all of these defensive linemen that are going to be available via trade, whether it's Jalen Carter and Max Crosby and all of this stuff, like, it'll be fascinating to see the teams that get aggressive for these players and the teams that don't try and get into that because they believe their trade market can bring one of these guys to them.
Yeah. You want some maybe exciting local college basketball news?
No, I want
talking about the Jeff Goodman tweet?
I'm talking about Matt Norlander tweet.
Oh, okay.
Someone from CBS Sports, senior writer for them. He said K-State has made contact with Josh Schertz, which was the tweet that you were talking about as they were referencing. He's one of 3 guys that they have interest in. Kansas State does. Matt Norlander says, but he will not be coaching there next year. Out of the mix there, St. Louis is in the midst of presenting a huge contract upgrade to try and keep Schertz around for at least another season, sources said.
Wow. Good for them.
Yeah, way to go, Slew.
If they're able to get that done, that's a huge move for them.
100%.
Did it just say for a season?
It says for at least another season.
I guess it's going to be a long-term deal, but, there's always
Your
a chance.
typical college coach's contract.
Yeah, he could be gone next year.
I actually appreciate the way that Norlander presented that because that's exactly what it is. If he signs an extension, it doesn't even mean that he's going to be back next year. Like, you could see Oregon open up and they're like, screw that extension. We'll pay the $10 million bucks or whatever it is to get you out of that.
We saw it with Drink.
Yeah,
Sure. It was like, hey, he signed. It's like, yeah, you can still leave, though.
Yeah, we saw that with Blake Baker, his offensive or defensive coordinator, who signed an extension and left
and was gone
like a month later.
It's a fun day out there.
So, yeah, big news, though. In all seriousness, K-State making contacts. That's one of the news pieces that I wanted to get to. Making contacts with Schertz, but he will not be coaching there. Again, according to Matt Norlander, who's very plugged in, according to the insider from CBS Sports. I wonder what they decide to do with him and what he decides to do. That'd be a huge get if they're able to keep him. Last piece of news. This comes from Pat McAfee on his show today. Kyler Murray, we talked about this yesterday, Alex, quarterback from the Arizona Cardinals. He's been released, and according to Pat McAfee, he is interested in joining either the Colts or the Vikings. We had heard a lot about the Vikings. I think that's probably where he ends up. The Colts are an interesting spot, man. If I was them, I would not tag Daniel Jones, and I would just go give, a couple $1 million to Kyler Murray, who's going to get all the money this year from Arizona anyways, and then just bring back Alec Pierce. Say, hey, let's go ahead and run this thing back. We'll have Kyler Murray as our quarterback. Alec Pierce remains the guy at the wide receiver position. If you just look at their careers and you told me a blind resume, who's the better quarterback, Kyler Murray or Daniel Jones? It's no contest. Kyler Murray has been better for their respective careers, and he's going to come at like $35 million less this year. Yeah. So if I have to choose Kyler Murray and Alec Pierce or just Daniel Jones, I can't even believe it's a conversation. I would absolutely go with the Kyler Murray side of things here.
I would go with the Kyler Murray thing. And who's the other, the Raiders quarterback that they're cutting?
Geno. I'd rather have Daniel Jones than Geno.
Daniel Jones makes me just worried because of an injury, and
I get it.
I think I would go with certainty in terms of just a guy who can actually go out there and perform for me. But Kyler makes me nervous. Like, I've seen enough of Kyler. I'm just not going to act as if Kyler could go to a better team and go out there and win. I thought he's had decent teams in Arizona and hasn't been able to get the job done.
Only reason if I'm Indy, I would pivot towards Kyler Murray. I agree on you on what you said with Daniel Jones. I don't really trust Daniel Jones. I just wouldn't trust him, especially coming off an Achilles injury. That is the biggest thing for me. Had he not torn his Achilles and played well the final stretch of the season, I would rather go with Jones than Kyler because I just don't think Kyler's a winning quarterback. It's worth the shot considering Jones is coming off a significant injury to his lower half.
All right, alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That is your news roundup across the NFL, college basketball, and the NHL. We are now less than an hour away from the NHL trade deadline. As we know, Alex, deadlines make deals. What are we going to see from the Blues in the next hour? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, we got less than an hour until the NHL trade deadline. And, man, there is nothing.
So you hear
nothing
the
out
tone
there.
of your voice changed from when we started the show to that?
How you feeling about
Trade
Falk being
deadline
moved?
day.
I
Less
think
than an
Falk's
hour.
gone.
Okay.
You still feeling good
holding
about
strong. Still good for you.
Yeah,
Good for you.
way to go, man. Way to go.
I can't imagine they're going to get to the deadline and they're going to be like, oh, well, we didn't do anything. Here's our team. It's the same team that we had prior to the deadline.
It's been the thing for the last two deadlines.
It's not happening.
You can't imagine that? Guy who's got control after this
I
season.
already owe you guys a 6-pack. I will put another 6-pack on the table.
Deal.
No, I haven't even seen the
6-pack on
first
the
one.
table that the Blues will trade Justin Falk within the next 52 minutes.
Friendly reminder that, there's deals that happen post-buzzer.
It may be announced afterwards.
Breaking news from Elliot Friedman. Momentum has been building between the Islanders and St. Louis to complete a Brayden Schenn trade.
But there you go.
Wow, to the Islanders. Oh,
Okay.
I had the breaking news
Alex,
already
I think they're
anyways.
going to trade Justin Falk.
man.
Who's this? You said Elliot Friedman?
Elliot Friedman, and now it was
Islanders?
just posted by Frank Saravalli. That sources are telling him the same thing.
Wow. And if it's getting out there that's...
The Islanders. Like, that's not a team.
Again, a reminder. Army doesn't let stuff get out.
No. I'm
And I will add this too, by the way, as a caveat. I've not seen anybody say anything about anybody being approached about a no trade either. I don't know if they're on his no trade list because remember he's modified.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this one wasn't getting announced until he's decided to waive.
I think,
now, could be wrong. I
would have thought of that with Parayko too.
I understand, but once you have that nightmare of a scenario that takes place, Schenn had already been approached. Our understanding is that all of the rest of the guys that have that no trade protection, they had been approached, and so they have an idea of what they're willing to do. Especially like Schenn, they know what his no trade protection is.
same with Falk.
He already had to submit his list, so they know how to work around that or to work with him on it. Whereas a guy like Colton Parayko, you just go to him. He doesn't have a list. The list is all 32 teams across the league, or 31 other teams rather. So with Schenn, they should have an idea on whether or not he's willing to go there.
If the Islanders acquire Schenn, at least if I'm looking at this correctly on Puckpedia, either the Blues are eating money on it or they're going to have to send a roster player back in return because their projected cap space is they're minus 3.2 mil. Their current cap space is 6 mil. So they'll be sending a roster piece back in return, which in my opinion might sweeten the pot in terms of what you're getting back in terms of the prospect.
And they've got a lot of... You want to talk about the Blues no trade protections. They only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players making more than $1 million on their roster that don't have no trade protection.
That's why people are like, the Blues need to go a different direction. Why? Because they have 3 guys with no trade protection?
Yeah. Would you take back like a Tony DeAngelo? He was making $1.75 million, right-handed defenseman.
No, Tony DeAngelo, he's been an off-ice problem.
And the reason why the Blues could literally just waive him tomorrow.
Fair.
So you take it on, you take on the money, you waive him tomorrow, and it's just a roster transaction that takes place on paper. And you say, all right, now we've made the move.
I really wonder if it would be like a Jonathan Drouin or something like that, an Anthony Duclair that you take on lesser money back in return. He's an older guy that you put on your roster. But yeah, I mean, any of those scenarios are up there. The Islanders one, why I was so surprised the Islanders was just like, man, why would the hell would Schenn want to go there? Tebow made the great point of you might not have a choice. That might be one of those teams that it's like, hey, you're going to this spot. Which I know this is behind the scenes.
They're good.
They're fine.
I mean, they're in the playoffs.
They're fine.
Yeah, your options are you go there or you stay with the Blues. What's better?
My stuff's here, though.
Yeah, where's the stuff?
Yeah, but you might not have a choice.
If that was a question for Justin,
devil's advocate for
well, and that's why it's just like, man,
they're tied for second in their division, man.
Dude, the Eastern Conference is
no doubt. I agree, but right now they're in the playoffs. It's a hell of a lot better situation than what he's in today.
They're in the playoffs, like Calgary said last year, right before the end of the season. We're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'll be fascinated to see the return.
Darren Dreger, work being done on deal to send Schenn to the Islanders, work still being done, players, approval, etc. So somebody maybe still hasn't been approached about if this should be approved. I was going to say, when you told
Damn
me,
it, Dregs!
when you said to me, well, surely he wouldn't do this again, right? I wouldn't give Army too much credit, man. He's cold-hearted.
I also don't know.
I don't know, to be fair, I don't know that that's on the Schenn side. It could be a bunch of the Islanders that you
could
were
be
just
guys on
talking
there.
about.
Yeah, my guess is it's on the Islanders
Man,
side.
I really wonder, though, if it's a Schenn one to where the only deal that came in was an Islanders team that was willing to pay the price that he had, and they're like, all right, well, we got to go to Schenn. And Dregs is just releasing more of this.
The fact that the Islanders also are a team that is notoriously, like, everything is cloak and dagger with them.
Nah, it used to be. That was Lou Lamoriello. He's not there anymore.
Okay.
Things have been a lot more wide open for that team since Lou Lamoriello has left. But they used to be that way.
Call your shot. What do you think the return would be for Brayden Schenn?
So they're not moving on from their top two prospects in terms of Aitchison and Eklund. Those are the two guys that were reported that the Blues are asking for. I wonder if it's like the next tier down of a younger guy like a Prokhorov, who's an 18-year-old who's playing in the KHL right now. He was the second-round pick. And then I'm just looking at their roster and seeing guys that, you could get in return and then move on from. What if it's a guy like J.G. Pageau? 33-year-old, he's $5 million. He's got a modified no trade, and then he's a UFA after this season. And you just walk away from it. That's what I have to imagine the Blues, unless Shabanov has been a guy that I know Friedman said is looking for a change of scenery. He's 25. He's entry-level deal, RFA after this season. Is he a part of a bigger contract on the other side? The fascinating part is what you said. Like, the Islanders are a playoff team, so they're not going to disrupt what they already have. They've got guys that have a lot of years of control, which I don't think the Blues would want to take on. And they also have guys that have no trade clauses.
And to throw this out there as well, in case there is a pick involved, they have 2 first-round picks in this year's draft.
Do you have
as
a
well.
second?
No, sorry, we can't get a second.
So it's a first-round pick. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, too, I think, would be coming back in return as a first-round pick.
Yeah, they've got 2 first-round picks. They've got the Devils' third-round pick, which would be pretty similar to a second in this year's draft. And then they've got all of their picks in 2027 and beyond.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. If I'm calling my shot, it's going to be some type of roster player to make the salary work, and it's going to be a level prospect and then a first-round pick.
So I do want to get more into this on the other side. What does this mean? Brayden Schenn's your captain. And if he is going to be traded to the Islanders, what does that signify for the Blues in terms of the leadership? How could that play into Robert Thomas's future here in St. Louis as well? We'll talk about that coming up on the other side here on 101 ESPN. It's official. According to Frank Saravalli, it's a done deal. Brayden Schenn has waived his no-trade clause to accept the deal to the Islanders. Still no firm acknowledgement of what the return will be for the Blues. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We now no longer have to have the conversations about the Blues doing nothing prior to this year's deadline. They have traded their captain. 34 years old, $6.5 million for this year, next, and one more year beyond that. So 3 years on his deal, 2.5, really, if you want to get specific about it. And he's now been dealt, Alex. This is a shakeup of the core in a meaningful way for the St. Louis Blues. Tried to do it with Colton Parayko, a guy over the age of 30, now have done so with Brayden Schenn. Huge implications from this deal, including you no longer have a captain. At least for the rest of this season, most likely. What does it mean? What's your biggest takeaway from this deal that has now, according to Frank Saravalli, actually been completed?
I'm shocked a little bit because I thought Schenn would actually be one of the guys that may not get moved just because of where the team is at, and there are other guys out there. But this is what you said. It's shaking up the core. You tried to move on from Parayko. You were unsuccessful with it. Now you've moved on from Brayden Schenn. And this is the Blues signaling to the rest of the team. One, there's going to be more of these moving forward. This roster is going to look massively different. And two, we're not going to have your blankie anymore. We're not going to have these guys that can protect you from all of the criticism. You're going to go out there and you're going to go. And I told you guys in the break, this is now the second captain that the Blues are moving on from in lieu of Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou being the faces of the team. I expect zero announcement on a captain for the rest of this season. I know everyone is going to say Jake Neighbors should get it. People wonder if Robert Thomas gets it. They're not going to make that announcement, but I'll be fascinated to see what it is in return because, again, I think you have to make the money work. Another guy that's pretty high up in the Islanders prospect pool, his name is Cole Yzerman, who's a forward. 20th overall pick back in 2024. He's playing in Boston University right now. So maybe that could be a piece of the pie in this one.
T-Bone, have you seen anything? I know you have all of these things on alert for you. Anything coming across in terms of the return for the Blues?
Nothing that I've seen yet for the return. All I'm seeing is just the report that we just said, which is that he has waived the no-trade clause to go there.
So on the captaincy front, I do wonder how that will influence the future of Robert Thomas. We know he's wanted it. Yeah. He wants it. He's a guy that values having that letter on his chest, and now the captaincy is there. It was easy to say, at least in my opinion, I guess easy for me. I don't think Thomas necessarily viewed it the same way, but it was easy to say, hey, this guy's ready for it in Brayden Schenn.
Oh, yeah.
He's accomplished everything. He's seen everything. He's more veteran than you. He is a leader inside of the locker room. He's vocal. He does everything on the ice. He is the personification of what we believe it means to be a St. Louis Blue. I would say the closest thing on the current roster to Brayden Schenn, and I don't think there would be a lot of pushback to this, is Jake Neighbors. He is the guy that I would look at and say, yeah, that's the next captain of the Blues. Mm-hmm. He has everything that you could ask for. When we talked to him the first time, we said that. This guy seems like a younger version of Brayden Schenn. So my pick, on the outside looking in, they obviously have more information than we do, would be Jake Neighbors. That is a very different selection, though, than going with Brayden Schenn over Robert Thomas. We know that for Vladdy, that was a bit of a hang-up when they decided not to go with Vladimir Tarasenko as the next captain of the Blues. He was frustrated by that. I do wonder if that's something that could get a little prickly inside of the clubhouse as well, with Robert Thomas potentially being passed over for a guy like Jake Neighbors. It's that inner dynamic within a team, and it's hard to put value on that, but I wonder how that'll influence the future for Robert Thomas here as well.
Those discussions, I have to imagine, are going to be taking place in that front office in terms of the decisions of what they do with Robert Thomas. I mean, I can't imagine if they decide to go with Jake Neighbors that Robert Thomas is going to be pleased with that decision. I mean, if you're him, you've been here longer. You were a part of a Stanley Cup championship team, and you feel like you are the leader of the team. I have to wonder if the Blues, on the other hand, because his name has been out there and they've been listening to calls on him, I don't think all of a sudden you just act as if, cool, that's our next captain for the St. Louis Blues. I will be fascinated to see if you were to ask me right now for who I believe the captain is, it's Jake Neighbors. If they're shifting this core to that group of players, Jake Neighbors has already worn a letter when all of these guys are out of the lineup. Jim Montgomery has been glowing about Jake Neighbors since the moment he took over. Jake Neighbors is vocal on the bench. Jake Neighbors is vocal in the locker room. Jake Neighbors is at his locker post-losses, post-wins. Jake Neighbors feels like the guy that would be the next one to take over as captain for the Blues, but they may have different opinions on that moving forward.
Somebody on the text line said, from Bachog over on the YouTube chat. By the way, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL is where you can go. Does the C pay more? Do they get a bonus? No, but it is it is something of notoriety. It is status. It is being recognized for all of your accomplishments.
And you're the leader of a National Hockey League team.
There are only 32 at most captains in the NHL at any given time, right? So there are only so many players that can be recognized as such. And it is something that sets you apart from your peers. There's one way to do that with money. There's another way to do that with a letter. So for a lot of guys, that is something that really matters. And many players have been working their entire lives for two things. One, to be a captain, and two, to win the Stanley Cup. And I guess three things. Three, to hoist the gold medal, or to earn a gold medal for their country. That's kind of the things that you aspire for as a hockey player. So yeah, it's a huge deal to be a captain. And I believe, and I'm pretty certain on this, Robert Thomas values that immensely. Mm-hmm. And he wants it. And now that it's an attainable goal, I will be very curious to see how that influences what their decision is with Robert Thomas in the offseason, or what it means for their decision with Thomas in the offseason. If you don't trade Robert Thomas, it feels as if they will view that as, okay, last chance, now you're the leader once again. We moved on from O'Reilly. You didn't get the captain because you were young. We feel like you're ready to be the captain. Here it is for you. But do you think it's the right thing to do to just give a guy the captaincy, even if you think somebody is worth the captain more?
This is a terrible analogy, so I apologize, but I think that's the equivalent of a disrupted marriage that says, well, let's get pregnant and have a baby.
I was going to make the exact same analogy.
Yeah,
so
I don't think that's a smart move and we don't know any of this. But if there's issues beyond just the not being the superstar that they thought, you don't just give a guy the captain. There's a lot of pride in terms of wearing the C for the St. Louis Blues. This isn't like the Columbus Blue Jackets or some of these teams. The Winnipeg Jets teams haven't been around. Like, this is a team that has had the likes of Chris Pronger and Bernie Federko and Brett Hall and Bobby Plager. Like, there's a history of wearing that letter. And it doesn't even represent the team. It represents the city. It represents the fans. And you've got to show that passion to wear it. And remember also who's taking over after this year. Not that the general manager has the biggest say in this, but he's got a say in this.
Yeah, I mean, a huge say.
Just like you pull the entire team and say, who's the captain? Like you sit down. They did this when they named David Backes. They did this when they named Alex Pietrangelo. They did this when they named Brayden Schenn. Who's the leader? Who's the guy that should be the captain? And they went to Brayden Schenn.
All right, we got an update from Jeremy Rutherford. We do not know the return still. I want to say that up front. But according to JR, the Blues did end up having to go to Brayden Schenn for this. He had a no-trade clause of 15 teams. The Islanders were on his no-trade clause list, so they were a team that he had to approve a deal to, and he did indeed, according to Jeremy Rutherford, waive the no-trade clause for this deal to go through. So that is the update. Brayden Schenn last year would not waive that no-trade clause to go somewhere. This year, it sounds as though that changed, and he is willing to go to the New York Islanders. The deal, according to multiple sources now, multiple reports, has gone through. Still waiting on exactly what the full deal will be, but part of that deal is Brayden Schenn going to the New York Islanders. The other piece, Alex, this is minor news. Matthew Joseph, who became a free agent yesterday, has officially signed with the LA Kings.
Yeah, I saw that one as well. Nugget for you, too. Brayden Schenn, if going to the Islanders, which sounds like it's true, will be back in St. Louis on Tuesday.
And he'll get a huge ovation, as he should.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. You asked me, I think it was last week, of, like in terms of these guys being moved on from, in terms of the Stanley Cup players. Mm-hmm. I didn't think this one would sting as much as it does because Brayden Schenn is the epitome of a leader. And I know people will say, well, the team hasn't done anything with him as the captain. That's fine. I know what he does behind the scenes. I know some of what he does behind the scenes. And he's one of those guys that is always willing to talk. And I know it doesn't mean as much in the grand scheme of things to people and fans, but for somebody that is a part of the group that relays information from the team to the fan base, this guy is an A-plus human being. And it's tough to see him go because the moment they traded for Brayden Schenn was when I thought that winning window really opened, when they got him from the Philadelphia Flyers for the first-round picks. And, man, it's a big piece of that pie that the legacy is now shifting away from that Stanley Cup championship.
I can give you a part of the return. According to Darren Dreger, a first, a third-round pick, and a prospect will be in return for Schenn. Do not know the name of the prospect yet, but at least a first and a third-round pick will be coming for Brayden Schenn.
So not an NHL player. Man, how are they making that money work?
Maybe the Blues are retaining some salary.
Yeah. That could explain.
Because they don't have to retain much because he's, what, 6.5?
Yeah, and it's not that much, right? Because it's at the deadline.
Yeah.
And next year,
for their deadline available space, they've got six. So if the Blues were to retain like $1 million on the deal, they could make it work.
But he would be only worth like what, about 3.5 right now?
Their deadline space is 6. So I think that is the actual cap hit that they're able to get. So it's a little wonky. It becomes a little confusing.
Well,
but I
it
think they can make this work up to a $6 million player coming in return.
And it shouldn't affect them in the playoffs in terms of the playoff roster as well, because Kyle Palmieri's not coming back for them this year. He's 4.75, and I think Romanoff is done, who's $6 million. So
there you go.
Some pieces of it. But I'll be fascinated to see the prospect.
Even if you told me, a week ago, Blues are able to get a first and a third round pick for Brayden Schenn, how you feel? I said, that's good. That sounds about right.
How about this nugget? He apparently didn't have to leave. Apparently the Islanders are at the same hotel as the Blues right now.
Really?
In San Jose.
That's amazing.
I get maybe they're playing in San Jose.
Well, the Blues are tonight.
No, I'm saying maybe the Islanders have like San Jose tomorrow.
They do. They're in San Jose.
He didn't have to leave didn't have to go very far.
They're in San Jose tomorrow night.
That's wild.
That's pretty good.
Actually, you know what?
Shout out to Andy Strickland. He's the one who reported that, by the way.
How about this? He does not have to leave tonight because he's just going to play there tomorrow. And then he comes back to St. Louis for their next game on Tuesday, so he can come back and get whatever he needs.
You know what?
He's already packed for this trip, and now he just gets to come back to St. Louis.
Everyone says Doug Armstrong's cold-blooded, but no, he's not, man. He just traded the guy to the team that's at the same hotel, so you don't have to leave. Wait, and you get an extra night off, Brayden.
Remember when the Cardinals were in Washington, and it was the Soto sweepstakes, and it was like, hey, just go ahead and walk across. I think they did that for the Twins, too, when they traded for... God, who was it?
John Gant. Gant was the one who walked across. And they acquired... Or no, was that just...
I think that was just a minor league deal.
Yeah.
They were like, get out of here. Please stop walking people.
Man, last season when they potentially could have moved him to Toronto, it was a first and Fraser Minton. Mm-hmm. Now you're getting a first and a third, and
some kind
we'll
of
see what type of prospect comes back in return. It's a good move. I mean,
Brayden Schenn has real value across the NHL.
And I know people didn't believe it when we said it. I know people push back saying he's been terrible. He performs in the playoffs. He's a leader, and he has won in the Stanley Cup. That's all that teams care about at this time of the year. Yep. So good for him, man. I'm a little surprised with the Islanders because, like, they're just – everyone's excited about the Islanders for being second place right now. They've got Matthew Schaefer, who is an incredible player. Look at their roster, though, man. They're old. Like they've got guys that are older, so like they're a tweener. And from JR's reporting yesterday on The Athletic, we're saying like, hey, Schenn's probably only going to approve going to Colorado. I'm a little surprised you approved to go to the New York Islanders, but he sees something there. He's got some type of connection, and he's one of those guys that I'm going to root for wherever he goes.
We'll let you know the full return whenever we do get it, whether it's on our show or on the Fast Lane. But the latest reporting from Darren Dreger is that the Blues are getting a first, a third, and a prospect in return for Brayden Schenn. The captain has been traded. He has waived his no-trade clause to go to the New York Islanders. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we'll continue talking about the trade deadline as we're now 30 minutes away. All eyes are turning at this point to Justin Falk.
Well,
Will we see something get done for Justin Falk? We got 30 minutes to do so. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The big news here in St. Louis on trade deadline day, according to Darren Dreger, the St. Louis Blues have traded their captain Brayden Schenn to the New York Islanders for a first-round pick, third-round pick, and a prospect in return. When we get the full return, we'll be sure to break it for you here on 101 ESPN. Don't forget, Doug Armstrong expected to speak to the media today at 3 o'clock. You'll be able to hear that live during the Fast Lane today. And the Blues back in action tonight when they take on the San Jose Sharks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock with Alex Ferrario. Puck drop at 9 o'clock with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
How you feeling, Alex? We got about 20 minutes left.
How are you feeling? I don't think Falk's going to be going.
I think he's gone.
Yeah?
Yep, I think he's going.
How about 12 Cactus Lime Mick Ultras on that one?
We'll see.
Oh, now we'll see.
Still waiting for my first 6 Bud
Yeah, I was going to say, that'll give me 18, which will be a great for golf in the summertime.
I like an urban chestnut Stamtish.
That sounds
Never heard
That's
of
tough to say with these in,
I was going to say,
That's
you
a
kind of
tough
spit
one.
all over it, man. Come out over there.
Zwickle, that's my favorite.
The Zwickle isn't my jam.
Loser.
Oh, that's trash.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Urban
trash.
Chestnut does some really good stuff. I would say probably the most underrated brewery in St. Louis. It's very good. Very
I
good.
agree with that.
I like me some Blue Moon every once in a while.
Well, that's not a St. Louis. I'm more of a St. Louisan than you when it comes to my beer choices.
You want to get some emos after today?
Beer choices?
No, you can't say you're St. Louis and not like
Colton
emos.
Brake will probably go to emos with you. All right,
would
Alex,
imagine
so
he would.
Justin Falk is, I would say, where most of our eyes are at this point.
Probably.
What's going to happen with him? They just got it done with Brayden Schenn. And the next one up is probably Falk.
Yeah, I think Dreger was the one that reported like a trade, it was like 30 minutes ago, a trade for Robert Thomas feels like it's less likely today, makes sense. Same can be said about Kyrou. I don't think Parayko was going to go either way.
Yeah.
And I actually, tinfoil, don't believe Pius Suter's going to get traded if they're moving Brayden Schenn. So I think it's literally just Falk. And I know Brian Lawton said today it's like 60-40 on Bennington. I guess anything can happen with that one. We know Vegas likes to strike deals at 205.
I do want to mention, we heard nothing about Schenn prior to the deal being announced. Nothing.
Yeah.
There was no speculation. There was no, hey, the Islanders are a team to watch on Schenn. There had been some rumors of, hey, the Islanders watch them on Kyrou. They've always had some interest in him. There was talks in the offseason. Maybe those continue into today. The Schenn stuff just came out of nowhere. And then it was, boom, Schenn traded. He's waived his no-trade clause. He's going to the Islanders. So keep that in mind. If you're freaking out today because there hasn't been much speculation on Justin Falk, there also was nothing out there on Brayden Schenn. That does not mean nothing is being done behind the scenes. It just means we haven't heard about it.
As we've talked about on this show before, Army keep things more tight-lipped around the Blues organization, so that would fit the MO of the Blues, that you're not hearing things. It's very rare you hear things leak out, to your point, on like Brayden Schenn, for example.
Somebody said, why no Sundqvist trade? They could still do that. The Sonny return, though, just isn't significant.
Yeah, well, I just don't know if there's an appetite for Sonny around the NHL either. He's been injured a lot this season.
And even if there was, you're probably getting a, fifth or sixth round pick, some kind of a conditional pick for him.
I would say, yeah.
If the Blues want to keep him around for next year, which is possible, and I don't think that would be a bad idea, I'm fine with them retaining Oskar Sundqvist. I'm not going to make a big stink out of them keeping Sonny for the rest of the year, a week after he had a baby, and when they potentially want to keep him around for next year, and giving up a late round pick that almost never becomes anything at the NHL
Give him the
level.
C, right? Make a captain Sonny the rest of the way.
I'm not going that far. The only guy that I think they deserve criticism if they don't decide to move him is Justin Falk.
Oh, and you are going to have a very loud criticism on Justin Falk if they don't move him. The teams that have just been too quiet, Boston, Detroit, Carolina. And I know Carolina, as T-Bone reported, acquired Dislury or whatever, but those teams view themselves as, hey, the Eastern Conference is wide open. We should be able to make a move. those are the teams, and Detroit and Boston were both tied to the Blues in terms of a right-handed defenseman. Those would be the teams that I'll look at and say, if there's going to be a Justin Falk move, it's probably going to be of one of those.
I don't know when this was said by Darren Dreger, but I just saw this from what he must have said on Trade Central, which is a sports show up in Canada. A lot going on right now in St. Louis. I can tell you that teams sniffing around on Falk. Red Wings are one of those that are talking to him, but nothing seems close right now.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah. So, and I think you're going to see a lot of the Blues players that are going to just be right before the deadline buzzer is going to be, hey, can we make a deal?
Another team that we had brought up as well when we were talking about Kyrou potentially, we talked about Simone Nemec, for example, with the New Jersey Devils. Anthony DeMarco, who covers for Daily Faceoffs, is reporting nothing sounds imminent with the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, the off-season move.
I don't think Kyrou's getting moved. I don't think Kyrou's getting moved. I don't think
Thomas
I would be
Parayko.
shocked if there's anything on Parayko.
Yeah,
Thomas, same thing.
I don't think Binnington is either. Because if you're going to trade Binnington, you got to get a goalie back in return, and I just don't see them doing that. So I think right now your focus is on, do they move Suter or Sundqvist, which I'd say probably not, and then Justin Falk.
By the way, NFL news, I mentioned earlier, Rashawn Gary has been released. Nope. Apparently there are takebacks when it comes to
there's no takebacks.
releases, according to Rob Domofsky, who covers the Packers for ESPN.com.
No takesies, backsies.
Rashawn Gary has not been told he will be released or traded. In fact, according to a source to Rob Domofsky, his Instagram account was hacked.
Yeah, there's a good excuse we'll all believe.
With a full goodbye post, a quote from Rashawn Gary, everything. Just all of it was apparently completely fake, allegedly.
Good. Until the actual trade gets agreed to, and then he'll put the post back out.
That's kind of where I'm leaning on this as well.
They said, hey, man, you can't put this out there. The trade's not done yet. Oh, sorry. I got hacked.
My guess is that they didn't think they would be able to get something for him. He puts this out. Somebody calls and says, hey, instead of that, we don't want to work out a new contract with Gary. We'll just take on the 2-year, $40 million that he has left. We'll give you a conditional pick. You guys cool with that? And the Packers are like, well, yeah, we'll take that instead of getting rid of him for nothing. It sounds great. So that would be my assumption on what's going on there. All right, coming up next, we'll put a bow on this thing.
Oh, my God, it's 143.
Hit the rewind. Oof. And we will go right up to the clock, baby, as the NHL trade deadline is in less than 20 minutes here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's 1:46 your time check, brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers, an officially licensed Rolex jeweler. Less than 15 minutes prior to the trade deadline officially expiring. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. That's all sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
By the way, something that we would ask you to do kindly, if you have not done so yet, subscribe to that podcast feed.
Yeah.
That way, immediately following our show, whenever they're posted, T-Bone gets those things out really quickly. They'll go straight into your feed, and you'll be ready to go. You'll see whatever the interviews were that day, the full hour podcasts, and you can search through if there's something specific that you wanted to see. You're a Blues fan, you're a Cardinals fan, NFL fan, whatever it may be, and you just want to hear that news for the day, you can go find it in your podcast feed. So wherever it is that you subscribe to podcasts, go ahead and subscribe today. That's an easy way to find our podcast. Also, the Last Minute Blues podcast will populate there, and the Redbird Report as well. So it's the easiest way to do so. Subscribe to those podcast feeds wherever it is that you get your podcast. The 101 ESPN app, by the way, presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
One reminder, too, for everyone with the deadline. Once the buzzer sounds at 2 o'clock does not mean there's no more moves. A lot of times, paperwork doesn't even get filed until 2 o'clock. So you'll typically hear trades that trickle out for about 15 to 20 minutes after. So keep it locked either here or to Jeremy Rutherford's reporting of The Athletic, because he'll typically put out there, hey, no more trades for the Blues. Doug's not scheduled to start to talk till 3, which tells me they're probably waiting up until the buzzer to see if something goes down.
According to a TSN insider, Bruce Garrioch, I don't know, sounds like the Red Wings have emerged as the front runner for St. Louis Blues defenseman Justin Falk with just about 15 minutes left to go.
And Rasmus Ristolainen not on the move, according to Anthony DeMarco. Did not get the price the Flyers wanted for him.
So that tells me that the price for the Blues wanted for Justin Falk is at least close to it. And if you think that Brayden Schenn got a first and a third and you're impressed by that, it's going to be a first and a decent prospect coming back in return for Justin Falk. If it's Detroit. I mean, Detroit's been scouting around the Blues for a right-handed defenseman, so has Boston, so anything can happen with that.
Anthony DeMarco once again tweeting out nothing imminent for the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
So
the Nemec thing is probably dead if you were hoping for.
I would suspect that's probably more of an off-season conversation, as was probably always the case.
And LeBron reporting that nothing on Robert Thomas front.
Yeah,
So
nothing's going to happen with Thomas. I don't think anything's going to happen with Colton Parayko. I think the guys you're potentially going to see at least discussed prior to the deadline are maybe Pius Suter. I'd be a little surprised on that. Justin Falk, and maybe Benner.
Yeah.
Those would probably be the 3 names that I'd keep an eye on.
Yeah, and Benner's the one that I don't believe, but
Agreed.
Keep an eye on it moving forward.
If you guys had to call your shot, what do you think we see done in the next? We are about 10 minutes away.
Justin Falk and Pius Suter for a high A prospect and a first-round pick. And then probably something else. That would be my prediction. But Falk to Detroit would be my prediction.
Done. I think they do one more deal. I think it's Justin Falk. Earlier today, I heard TMA talking about this, and Tim said he's got like thousands of dollars on the Blues over 2.5 trades at this year's deadline. And he was getting a little worried.
Right now.
Yeah. I heard them talking with a Blues reporter, Strickland, and he said, do you think that's going to happen? Are they going to go over? He said, I don't know.
Come on, man, is this going to go down?
Not sure about that, but if you include the Bukestad deal, maybe.
Yeah, that's a trade deadline move that happened back in, January?
Yeah. So I think they'll go under 2.5 deals.
Fowler was, right?
I think you'll see Justin Falk and Brayden Schenn traded at the deadline, which is fine. That's a pretty good deadline, man. If they get out of this thing and they've got 3 first-round picks and a couple of prospects and a third maybe.
Sounds like 2024 when they had 3 first-round picks, and I was like, they're not using all of these, and then they legitimately used every single one of those.
One of them became Otto Stenberg, and another one became Theo Lindstein, who's still in their prospect pool as well.
Yeah.
That's not so bad.
Yeah. It's not. I still think you need to move on from some of the core, but as we've talked a lot about, it just didn't make sense to be a deadline move because of how much they're asking. You just got to wait till the offseason and see what takes place. But I still, without question, think something gets happened or done at that point.
I know poor JR is going to be asked to grade the Blues deadline in The Athletic probably for the weekend. I don't think you can realistically throw a grade on their deadline, quote unquote, till you see the second act, which will be till we get to the draft. Yeah. Once the draft passes, if there still hasn't been a big move, and guys like Thomas, like a Kyrou, like a Parayko, if they're still here, then I think you can reassess and grade them. This has been, we said this in the office, I think you mentioned this earlier. It's like a 2-part movie today. Today was part 1 of the movie, and they moved on from the captain, Brayden Schenn. We'll see if there's anything else that's out there for them. And then part 2 is when they can get where some of these conversations that they've had here in part 1 might start to trickle into the offseason. Then they can readdress the Thomas, the Kyrous, and the Parayko.
Yeah, it even goes beyond the draft. I think it goes into the free agency period. Like, you're going to have to wait if you're a Blues fan until something takes place before next training camp, because that's really where they're at.
8 minutes until the deadline.
I'm saying no more deals.
I think we should treat this like
that's
a ball
gonna be my
drop.
shot.
You don't really believe
5,
that.
4.
What gives you any hint that there's going to be another move
You see how he said at the end of it? Do you?
Yeah, no, I do believe that there will not be another move for the Blues.
You don't think they trade Falk?
I don't think so.
I
think he's going to be here. I don't think they get the asking price, and I think that's been kind of the theme right now today. Is nobody seems to be budging.
I think you might. I think if you're Boston and Detroit, you're starting to get that itch. Like, you're trying to play chicken right now, and it's like, dude, there's 7 minutes left. We got to make a move. Like, the fact that Detroit and Boston have made 0 moves, and both of those teams are playoff teams. And I know Detroit made the Perron move. I love David Perron, but I don't really think that's a move that changes things. It's so hard for me to look at it and be like, man, like, you're not going to just let this deadline go and not make a move if you're Steve Yzerman. So I think I'm starting to more on BK's side of, like, I do think the Justin Falk thing happens.
It has been quite a dud of a deadline in the NHL. Yeah. Do you guys think this is related to the changes in rules? It's not just the playoff rule, don't forget. It's also, there's no third-party retention anymore on salary. I think that one probably has more of an impact than the playoff. Yeah. You have to be under the actual cap with the rostered players that you're taking onto the ice.
Yeah, that has to play a part in this one, because like teams like Vegas can't go out there and throw everything at one big name to make your roster dynamic, because you know you have to be cap compliant once it comes to the postseason. But I will also say there's not a lot of big names out there that's available via trade other than the Blues, and the Blues don't want picks. Picks are gold at the deadline. Prospects with names are off-season moves, and the Blues have been the one-stop shop for everything. So unless you've got a big name that you're okay giving up for picks, and there haven't been a lot of those, I think that's why you see most teams waiting on the Blues. Vincent Trocheck has said, I'm not going anywhere other than the Eastern Conference. Nazem Kadri's ownership of the Calgary Flames don't want to move him. So there's just not a lot of names out there. And the free agent class, by the way, it's going to be just as much of a dud as the names that are available at this year's trade deadline.
T-Bone, you've got something?
No, I've got literally nothing.
You keep looking up and like acting like you're getting ready to go into
I'm more ready to jump in. I'm trying to jump into the conversation while also trying to keep up with all the rumors that are out there. I need you,
my rumor guy.
Somebody on the text line, I can't verify this just yet. I will check. Let's take a look. According to the text line, blame them, not me. They say somebody on NHL Network just mentioned a guy by the name of Brandon
Schneider.
Schenn as a potential prospect that's coming in return.
Brandon Schenn for Brayden Schenn. I think he got punked.
Okay.
I don't even think there's a Brandon Schenn. Hold on, let's look at the Islanders prospect pool.
I don't know, man. Again, yell at the text line. Okay.
Maybe they're getting Matt Luff back in return.
Maybe. The other aspect of this that I think could be leading, that makes sense, that could be leading to the lack of trade deadline moves. Guys, look at how flat the standings are right now, especially in the Eastern Conference. The gap between like third place in the Atlantic Division and the Ottawa Senators, who are in sixth place in their division, is 8 points, and the Senators have played one fewer game. There's just not a big gap right now. So even the top contenders have not pulled away, and the teams that are in that mix for the wild card, they're not assured of that. So you don't want to really go for it right now. You're a cautious buyer if you're a buyer, and if you're a seller, there are only a few teams that are truly out of it right now. The Rangers being one, and a lot of these guys that are on these teams have no trade protection, which complicates matters as well.
Yeah, and a quick update from our Blues insider, Jeremy Rutherford. He just tweeted, I don't think the Blues are done. Still a possibility of moving Falk, perhaps Detroit. So that makes me think that he is hearing something on a Falk move to Detroit, which feels like it's Detroit or bust right now for Falk in the final.
Yeah, which makes sense.
3.5 minutes here.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and look right now. I'm curious, what do the Detroit Red Wings have draft pick-wise? They've got their first and second, and they've got the Sharks third and their third this year. And Detroit has their first-round pick next year, no second-round pick next year, but they do have their third-round pick next year.
And they need no salary cap retention on Justin Falk. They've got all of the salary cap
they have $56 million in cap space. How's that possible?
How are they not below the floor if that's the case?
Well, I don't know, to be honest with you. Do they have guys on LTIR? No.
I don't know what's going on there.
Yzerman's cheating up there in Detroit.
Yzerman's cheating right now.
It's quite the Yzer plan.
I don't understand. The $70 million floor, they're at 83. How do they have $56 million in cap space? I don't know, man.
Let's count it up together.
NHL's weird.
Let's count it up together.
In the system.
Yeah, they got like one guy in terms of
Larkin.
a player that's making. No, they have three guys that are making more than $8 million on their roster.
All right. From Pierre LeBrun, he confirms what T-Bone had said earlier. Rasmus Ristolainen staying put. Flyers had a price on it, and they stuck with it. Other than that, man, whole lot of nothing out there
Just
in the
a big,
NHL right
fat
now.
Dud.
An absolute dud of an NHL trade deadline. A lot of smoke on the possibility of Justin Falk heading to the Detroit Red Wings. Have not seen anything definitive on that, but Jeremy Rutherford tweeting out, as T-Bone said, don't think the Blues are done. Still a possibility of moving Falk perhaps to Detroit. Anything else you guys are seeing that I'm missing right now that seems to be legit?
I think that's about
on
it.
The landscape.
I think that's about it. You're not seeing anything other than the Justin Falk stuff unless some type of deal is being held until the buzzer. But again, even at 2 o'clock, if they don't move Justin Falk, there's still about a 10 to 15 minute grace period of there could be a guy that gets moved that just they were delayed in getting the paperwork done.
I haven't seen anything on official on Kadri either, right? I saw the speculation. Did that ever officially go through either?
Nobody even reported that, he was... that he wasn't getting moved. It was just kind of radio silence on that front. So something tells me we're going to see a couple of moves past the buzzer in terms of these deals are just getting put through.
All right, 2 minutes left. The Fast Lane will have your full updates today. They have Doug Armstrong's press availability coming up at 3 o'clock, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Before we get off the air, we'll break all of this stuff down on Monday at 11 a.m. Alex, final thoughts. Do you think they will make another move beyond just trading Brayden Schenn?
I think Falk's moved.
T-Bone.
I'm saying no. No more deals for the Blues.
I would say that they will indeed trade Justin Falk as well. And Brayden Schenn, if you missed it, is officially going to the New York Islanders as he has waived his no-trade clause. They will be getting in return a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and a prospect. We do not yet have the official return on who that prospect is. The Fast Lane has the full reporting on what will take place seconds from now at the official NHL trade deadline. They'll do that next. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend here on 101 ESPN.